Okay, let's call the meeting to order. This is a Board of Education meeting, Tuesday, May 8th. The board has been in closed session since 6 p.m. for the reasons of closed sessions 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, and 2E. We have 6 board members present, 1 absent. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have several recognitions tonight, and the first one is the Congressional App Challenge winner.
Good evening. Can I please have Ava Hollis come forward? The Congressional App Challenge is designed to engage student creativity and encourage their passion for STEM education fields. High school students from across the 5th Congressional District competed to design and create software for mobile, tablet, or computer devices on a platform of their choice. Ava's app, which is called React, aimed to connect people to nearby EpiPens, inhalers, and other medical supplies and services when first aid can be administered before paramedics are able to respond. Ava is a freshman at York High School and was recognized by Mike Quigley as the winner of the 5th Congressional District's App Challenge. Congratulations, Ava.
Okay, you have to be up here a little bit longer. I have a proclamation I wanted to read. But before that, I did a little bit of research about the Congressional App Challenge and their mission. And it is to inspire students from every corner of the country to explore STEM, coding, and computer science through hands-on practice, and to include students from communities that are traditionally underrepresented in the tech community, and innovate policymaking by connecting members of Congress to new and emerging technologies through students. So that's very exciting. So I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas the Congressional App Challenge is designed to engage student creativity and encourage their participation in STEM education fields, and students from across Illinois' 5th Congressional District were encouraged to create and exhibit their software applications for computer devices, which highlights the value of computer science and shines a light on the growing importance of STEM-related skills. And whereas the challenge requires students to code original applications for the chance to be selected for recognition by members of Congress, and whereas U.S. Representative Mike Quigley of Illinois' 5th Congressional District recognized Ava Hollis as the winner of the Congressional App Challenge, and Representative Quigley stated, Ava's app is the perfect example of how young Americans are embracing technology and STEM education to solve real-world problems. And React is a life-saving tool that provides residents with the opportunity to help one another quickly in times of medical emergencies. And I'm very proud of Ava's creativity and innovation and pleased that she is representing Illinois' 5th District. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to Ava Hollis, her parents, and the faculty of York Community High School. Thank you.
Would Ken Ross and the Skills USA kids come on up?
Don't I? Oh, yeah, there you go. Get together by height? Just try to throw it in there. Yeah, hi, I'm Ken Ross, and this is Joe Stolz, and we're both advisors for Skills USA at York High School. Again, as I always do, and it's very, very important to me to mention this, I'd like to thank the school board, Dr. Moyer, and his cabinet for giving us the opportunity to honor these students and for supporting industrial technology at York High School. I'd also like to thank our principal, Erin DeLuga, and her administration for their positive support of our students and also the industrial technology programs at York. Your support gives us the opportunity to educate and train students for a successful future and participate in these exciting career-building competitions. Little background on this year, we had 56 students from industrial technology take the state written qualification exams. 27 of them qualified for state. Not big, I'm not a big math guy, but that's about half. So that's pretty good. And that says a lot about our programs and our students. So a lot of schools in the state don't like us, but that's okay. And those 27 students competed at state in Springfield this past April. This year we took home 2 state medals. At this time, I'd like to recognize our winners for screen printing technology. The tall, strapping man right here, Matt Shepard, who took second place. Yeah, go ahead. And most importantly, Matt has, for the second year in a row, mastered the Firebrand Chili Challenge at the Chili Parlor in Springfield, so his name is now on the wall twice. We think that's important. First place, the other strapping young man right there, Joe Gemini. Joe took first in technical drafting CAD. This is his second year in a row. Joe's a sophomore. And this will be the second year in a row he's going to nationals and representing York, Elmhurst, District 205, and the state of Illinois as he competes against students from around the country, Puerto Rico and Guam, at the National Conference and Competition in Louisville, Kentucky, this June 25th to the 29th. And finally, I'd just like to say that these hardworking young people that are members of Skills who did not place in the top 3 at the state level represented York High School and our community very well, and we are very proud of them. Congratulations to all of our students that went downstate, and especially our 2 state winners. Thank you.
I learned a while ago, whenever you follow Ken Ross, don't say much because there hasn't been much left unsaid. So I'm going to congratulate these gentlemen. A great job. Point out that we see Ken and his department here quite often. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Thank you. So I'll get right to the proclamation. Whereas the Skills USA state competition is acknowledged as a prestigious student recognition program in the industrial arts education, which provides quality educational experiences for students in leadership, teamwork, citizenship, character development, in addition to promoting community service. And whereas this program encourages excellence on the part of individual students and encourages schools to establish industry standards for job training skills in the classroom, and all competitors must pass a written test to secure their spot in the competition. And whereas the following York Community High School students earned medals in the specified competition categories at the Skills USA Illinois Championships on April 19th through 21st, 2018 in Springfield, Illinois. As noted, Joe Gemini, thank you, first place, technical drafting CAD, and Matthew Shepard, second place, screen printing. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to the York Community High School, to District 205, and to our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to these students, their parents, and the faculty of the Industrial Technology Department, Wendy Albert, Division Chair for Technology and Applied Arts, Ken Ross, Department Leader, Dan Kallenberg, Ron Roback, and Joe Stotz for these outstanding accomplishments. Congratulations.
Okay, Wendy Albert and the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
If we could have all the FCCLA students come up front. As well as our FCS teachers, you guys can come on down. You don't have to hide. All right, I'd like to echo Ken Ross's thank you to the school board, as well as Superintendent Moyer, the York administration, and all of the parents and teachers for our FCCLA students for supporting them and recognizing them this evening. Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America is comprised of over 200,000 students enrolled in family and consumer science classes across the country. Students in FCCLA can compete in many different competitions specific to their career focus and area of interest. Students extend their learning through competitions by competing in various competitions that align with their family and consumer science career pathways, including culinary arts and hospitality management, early childhood and education, fashion design, and interior design. This year we had 27 state competitors who brought home 10 gold medals, 14 silver, and 3 bronze medals. All of the students' names and their competitions and medal status will be read in the official board proclamation, but I'd like to take a moment to recognize specifically our national qualifiers. So students, if you could go ahead and step forward, Joey Cornell, Kevin Homan, Margaret Quick, and Janine Telleron. These students all placed in the top 1 or 2 for their competition, with the exception of culinary arts. The top 3 students advanced to nationals. The students who are able to attend nationals this summer are both Joey and Kevin. So they'll be representing York High School and Elmhurst District 205 at the FCCLA National Leadership Conference in June in Atlanta, Georgia. Kevin will be competing in an event called Say Yes to FCS Education, which exposes students to different competencies that they will need to know if they go on in a career in family and consumer science education. It's really exciting that he's planning to do that, and he also gets to participate in a special signing ceremony that's going to bring together all of the seniors at the National Leadership Conference who are going to be pursuing family and consumer science education after graduation. Joey will be competing in the culinary arts competition as a member of the 3-person Illinois culinary team, along with 2 students from Glenbrook South. To give you an idea, it's really difficult to make the culinary team. He had to compete at the state level, and then he actually had to go compete 2 more times in mini competitions. And he was assessed on everything from his teamwork to his knife skills to cooking abilities. After the team of 3 was selected, they now get to go to weekly 4 to 5 hour culinary trainings Meetings with a chef from Kendall College. So they're getting one-on-one training, which I know is going to be really exciting for Joey to actually bring all that knowledge back to the York Culinary Program because he's only a junior. So I'm really excited for that for next year. I want to wish best of luck to Joey and Kevin at Nationals this summer, as well as congratulate all of our state competitors. And we will now hear the proclamation.
Thank you, Wendy. It's always a pleasure to have you here every year. So with that, I will read the proclamation. Whereas the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, FCCLA, is a nonprofit national career and technical education student organization for young men and women enrolled in family and consumer sciences in public and private schools through grade 12. And whereas the FCCLA State Competition Award Program is acknowledged throughout the nation as a prestigious student recognition program in family and consumer sciences, related education. And whereas the FCCLA State Leadership Conference was held in Springfield, Illinois on April 12th and 13th this year, and the following York Community High School students earned top positions in the competition categories as noted. And let's see how I do with the last names, but first, apparel, construction, gold, Jacqueline Fisher and Grace Weisenmeyer. Silver, Peyton Herman, Maya Anikij. Did I get it? I can't believe it. My apologies up front. Kate Shermer and Jolene Gundrum.
Yusra.
Bronze, Yusra Heswari. Children's Literature Presentation Gold, Jenna Galicio and Alina Vasmar. Culinary Arts Star Event Silver, Joseph Cornell, Elizabeth Lopiano, and Patrick Ressing. There's some giggling, I might have gotten that one wrong, sorry. Patrick. Fashion Apparel Display Bronze, Catherine Larson and Delaney Tace. Food Production Salad Display Silver, Aiden Mann. Thank you, Aiden Mann. Interior Designs Senior Star Event Silver, Ella B. Rohde. Interior Design Occupational Category Gold, Margaret Quick. Silver, Jenna Telleron. I heard that. Pastry Arts, Cake Decorating Gold, Nina Fabrizius. Silver, Tabitha Lee. Pastry Arts, Cookie Decorating Gold, Samuel Phillips. Silver, Alexandra Geary. Professional Career Image Gold, Emma Johnson. Catherine Pisacek. And Gabriella Purpura. Silver, Isabella Herrera. Say yes to FCS Education Silver, Kevin Homan. And whereas the following students received the most outstanding distinction, which denotes the top project for their category in the state of Illinois, Kevin Homan, Nina Fabrizius, and Emma Johnson. And whereas, in addition to Joseph Cornell placing second in the Culinary Arts Star event, he received a $1,000 scholarship from the Culinary Institute of America, and Kevin Homan received an Illinois Family and Consumer Science Teachers Association National Conference stipend. And whereas Joseph Cornell, Kevin Homan, Margaret Quick, and Jenan Telron were named national delegates and qualified to advance to the National FCCLA Leadership Conference in June in Atlanta, Georgia. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to these students, their parents, and the faculty of the Family and Consumer Services Department, Wendy Albert, Division Chair for Career and Technical Education, Jenna Collin, Lori Foss, Lindsay Goldsmith, Sarah Merrick, and Ashley McDonough for these outstanding accomplishments. Congratulations to all of you students, and thank you, faculty.
thank you all for coming. One more. Oh, we got one more. Rob Wagner, and Mark Cohen is going to do the introduction.
It's my pleasure to introduce Rob Wagner, the 2018 Class 3A and 4A Athletic Director of the Year from the Illinois Athletic Directors Association. Rob has spent the last 15 years at York High School. He's been a dean, the athletic director previously, became the assistant principal for student services, then the assistant principal for activities and finance, and then returned to be the assistant principal of athletics in 2014. Well, I've just gotten to know Rob over a short period of time. I can tell you that Rob is one of the most student-centered individuals I've had the opportunity to work with. On mornings when I get to York before school starts, I'll sometimes stop outside, and Rob's standing out there every day greeting students on the way in, which says something because he's usually one of the last people to be there at night after all the activities have wrapped up to go home. He spends a tremendous amount of time at York High School, and he knows kids by name and greets them by name as they come in the building. He's student-centered, he cares about every program at York High School, and he's an advocate for kids. He's a great role model for coaches and students alike, and it's a pleasure to work with you. Congratulations, Rob. Well deserved.
I really love these portions of our meetings because it gets to remind us of our outstanding schools that we have. Not only do we in District 205 think we're outstanding, these celebrations are a reminder that other people throughout the state also think we're outstanding. And there's a pyramid. In order to have all these outstanding people, we've seen all the outstanding students. We've seen all of the coaches and sponsors who make them so great. And what's so incredibly and equally important now is we get to see the administrators who are the leaders who make us who we are. And that's what Rob and this athletic director recognition symbolizes. For all the state, he was selected. Let me read this proclamation. Whereas the mission of Illinois Athletic Director Association is to improve athletic understanding and relationships throughout the high schools, foster a closer working relationship with the Illinois High School Association, the IHSA, and other organizations working for state and national progress, to develop greater unity, uniformity, and fellowship among all members, improve the articulation of interscholastic athletics in a total educational program, and to provide an opportunity for exchange of ideas concerning mutual problems and practices. And whereas the Illinois Association Directors Association has announced that Rob Wagner, Assistant Principal for Athletics at York Community High School, has been selected by the Illinois Athletic Directors Association as the 2017-18 Class 3A and 4A Division III Athletic Director of the Year. And whereas Rob Wagner has been at York High School for 15 years, with 8 of those years as the Assistant Principal for Athletics, and has served in many roles during his time with District 205, which have ultimately contributed to his success at York High School. And whereas this award recognizes athletic directors who have demonstrated a positive impact on their students and the community, and Rob Wagner will be honored, or was honored, at an awards banquet that was held as part of the IADA State Conference in East Peoria on May 5th. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York Community High School, District 205, and the community at large. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to the Class 3A, 4A, Division III Athletic Director of the Year, Rob Wagner, for this outstanding achievement. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we move into the public comments. The board will receive public comments for up to 3 minutes concerning items on the agenda, as well as communication, petitions, reports from citizens or representatives of other public agencies. We ask that to respect everyone's time, you keep your comments to 3 minutes. The timer will beep at 3 minutes, and we ask at that time you wrap up with a sentence or two to let the next speaker go. So this first speaker tonight is Jeff Mariner. Sorry if I got that wrong.
Good evening, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to address the board. I would like to use this time to express concerns with the boundary adjustments as proposed for the April 10th presentations. As the boundaries stand today, every student in the pocket considered for transfer from Lincoln Elementary to Hawthorne Elementary resides less than 1 mile from Lincoln. None of the streets between home and schools pose heavy traffic, and the kids in the neighborhood can walk to school. With the proposed change, every home will be over 1 mile from Hawthorne, with some children's homes extending 2 miles from Hawthorne. While the modification does not make intuitive sense from the perspective of increasing distance, the safety of children is what is much more concerning. Rather than a safe, short walk to Lincoln, students commuting from the pocket that is currently North Lincoln to Hawthorne will be crossing St. Charles Road, railroad tracks, and navigating York High School traffic. I'm sure I speak for all parents or expecting parents in the neighborhood when I say it is too great of a safety concern to allow children to walk to school as they have been able to do in the past. Accordingly, there will be dozens of additional cars and at least one bus attempting to turn onto eastbound St. Charles Road during the morning and afternoon rush. Hundreds of high school students who either drive or walk to school will have additional traffic to navigate. In addition to the concerns related to logistics, I would be remiss if I did not express displeasure as to the amount of fossil fuel burning vehicles this plan will add to our city during both the morning and the afternoon. There is no disputing the evidence of the adverse impact automobiles and diesel-burning buses have on our environment, so I'm puzzled as to how a forward-thinking city such as Elmhurst would develop a plan that either increase traffic and emissions or put the safety of children in question. In addition to the safety and logistic concerns, I sincerely hope the board is considering the families and communities impacted by the boundary line adjustment. Frankly, I was a bit disappointed by the responses and lack thereof I received from the board members when I laid out my concerns via email to each member. Only 2 board members responded, and all that was provided in those responses were identical copy and pasted answers. While the presentation highlights only 5% of families are impacted, that's a lot of families by numbers, many of which moved to Elmhurst for the sole purpose of the school they expected to send their children. The schools are the backbone of the community, and the two should not be decoupled. As the grandfathering rules are a bit unclear, my wife and I fear our unborn child could be in a different school than all the other school-age children in the community. That's about as far from decoupling as it gets. The concerns of these families and the communities should not be glossed over with canned responses. Numerous portions of the material on the Board of Education website call for feedback. My feedback is as follows. Cropper essentially presents one option with an additional modification reflected for unknowns at Field School. I assume it was not a small amount of tax dollars that were funneled into Cropper for this study, so it would be my expectation that more than one scenario could be presented. More importantly, a plan that doesn't double, triple, or even quadruple the distance between the child's current and proposed school should be made a priority. High-quality community schools that are walkable for our children are what make Elmhurst the best city in the Chicago suburbs. We need all of the items in the master plan, but not at the expense of the community schools that make Elmhurst great. I'm sure there is a path to achieve both. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the public comments. The board typically does not reply at this time. So moving on to the, yep.
Could you explain the board policy when somebody sends a letter to all the board members, the response that they can expect?
Sure. So it is board policy that the president responds for the entire board and copies the entire board. And the talking points typically come from the district if necessary. So that's why we don't individually respond to each email. Does that answer your question? Address it? Thank you. Next item, we are into reports and presentations. All-day kindergarten.
Just wait and let my fantastic committee come around. As you all know, District 205 has been hard at work developing the next phase of its comprehensive facilities study and working to create a master facility plan that will serve our community needs for future-focused learning for many years to come. Some of this work has been focused on the community expressing the desire for the district to offer an all-day kindergarten program in Elmhurst 205. This all-day kindergarten committee is comprised of educators throughout the district, including principals, kindergarten, first grade, and special education teachers, and was formed to provide the Board of Education more information on the importance of and some basics on how the additional time can be used if we were to offer an all-day kindergarten program. You'll be hearing national, state, and local level information regarding trends in kindergarten, along with community interests, actions, and research that will support the desire and need for an all-day kindergarten program. Research has shown that due to the pressure for better scientific, technological, and economic advancement in order to receive a competitive edge in the global market, policymakers are pushing for better academic success, especially in literacy and numeracy skills among students. This pressure has trickled down to the academic ladder to kindergartners. Kindergarten has become the new first grade in recent years, yet no additional time in the district has been allocated to compensate for the increase in content and academic expectations for students, and while still maintaining the overall development of the whole child approach, which best serves our youngest learners. Throughout the presentation, you'll hear about how we can provide that well-rounded quality education that our young students deserve by extending their day and using that time with content designed to meet their overall development in academics, as well as social and emotional development in social emotional areas, that by providing them with time to apply academic content in a more natural way, integrate learning areas and STEM, and provide them for purposeful play that leads to more powerful learning by demonstrating what rigor can look like when it's redefined to mean big thinking in child-centered ways. The committee members were able to make tonight's meeting will expand upon the information and share how the district's future-focused framework supports the need for an all-day kindergarten program and how additional time can be used to make this program meet the learning needs of our younger students even more effectively than we currently do in a half-day program. I'll now turn it over to Jane, who will start with the national, state, and local data.
And so if we look at the graph that's displayed on the board, it shows the data from 1977 to 2013, and the percentage of kindergartners enrolled in full day compared to half-day programs. So the blue line going up is the full-day programs, and the green line going down is the half-day programs. Currently, the rates have tripled, and so from 28 to 77% of districts are now offering full-day programs. One of our key performance indicators includes the idea that our students will be reading at grade level by third grade. Unfortunately, with only a half-day program, we could become an outlier in that area. Okay, what are the other districts doing? So Elmhurst proudly compares itself to 7 other districts who are considered comparative. They are other unit districts, and they're all in DuPage County. So of that, all but one comparative district have an all-day kindergarten program. 79% of the 859 districts in the state are offering all-day programs in 2015, and 21 of 33 districts in DuPage County have all-day kindergarten. The only comparator school district not currently offering full-day kindergarten besides Elmhurst is Batavia 101. They started moving toward implementation in 2016. The board decided against it before it started. Board members supported the educational and social benefits of full-day kindergarten. They were concerned about funding the program while maintaining the state-mandated half-day kindergarten program that would create too many complications to manage without burdening families. Elmhurst is becoming an outlier in the county and the state by not offering an all-day kindergarten option for students in Elmhurst. Property values are impacted by the quality and opportunities for students available. As we become more of an outlier, what impact could this have on property values throughout the district? So what do we know? What has the Elmhurst community said about all-day kindergarten? The community phone poll done in the fall of 2017, 4 out of 5 residents would like to see D205 offer a full-day kindergarten program. Of the current kindergarten parents, there are 480 of them. 87% or 159 respondents expressed interest in all-day kindergarten with preference toward neighborhood schools. And the other kind of concern is that in 17-18, nearly 20%, 19% of our first graders were new to the district. It's likely that parents found options for a full day outside of the district and then returned to the district for first grade. The new to first grade enrollment over the last 5 years has ranged from 14.5% in 2013, and now it's stable at 18 to 20% each year from 2014 through this school year. The increase in students are distributed evenly throughout the 8 elementary schools, and all have increases since 2013. There were sharper increases in some schools, such as Edison, with only 3 students in 2013 to 8 to 13 per year in 2014 to current, and Jackson 6 in 2013 and 13 to 20 per year in 2014 to current. The numbers only highlight that the community would like all-day kindergarten and are finding options outside of D205. But other things to note is that we're not sure what the kindergarten curriculum and instruction was like for up to 20% of our students to ensure we know that they were well prepared in kindergarten for the rigors of first grade. I'm going to turn it over to Jen Barnaby.
The board may recognize the words I describe in this slide. These words come from the board members' beliefs about education shared in their individual profiles on the district website. We thought it appropriate to show how we all share the same beliefs and how those beliefs naturally flow into what we believe about the value of all-day kindergarten. We believe that all-day kindergarten educates the whole child in a developmentally appropriate manner by designing educational opportunities that foster a culture of curiosity and love of learning. As well, it provides the foundation for a well-rounded, future-focused, world-class education. Research compiled by the National Education Association shows that full-day kindergarten, though initially more costly than half-day kindergarten, is worth the expense, as it not only boosts students' academic achievement, it also improves their social and emotional skills. All-day kindergarten educates the whole child in a developmentally appropriate manner by enhancing the legacy of Elmhurst through equipping students with the skills necessary for 21st century learning and by supporting all students to reach their full potential. In a 2004 longitudinal study by researchers of the Education Statistics Services Institute, the American Institutes for Research, the National Center for Education Statistics, and the Institute of Education Sciences for the U.S. Department of Education, data demonstrates that children in full-day classes show greater reading and mathematics achievement gains than those in half-day classes. This landmark longitudinal study of full-day versus half-day kindergarten found that students in full-day classes learned more in both reading and mathematics than those in half-day classes. A 2013 study by the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto followed 600 students from kindergarten to second grade and found that full-day kindergarten students outperformed their peers who had attended full-day or half-day kindergarten. The study found that students were ahead in reading, number knowledge, writing, and in self-regulation. When children are taught by qualified teachers using age-appropriate curriculum, they can take full advantage of the additional social, emotional, and intellectual learning time that a full day allows. We believe that ultimately increasing the time for learning by providing a full-day program allows for the education of the whole child in a more developmentally appropriate manner. In the following video, you will see examples of the half-day kindergarten program we have in 7 of our elementary buildings, as well as examples of classrooms at Conrad Fisher who experience the benefits of all-day kindergarten.
We've been focusing on with subtraction. Does anyone remember what it's called? John? The cross-out strategy. Now I take away. One of the things that I've seen when I've been working with teachers is that they have so many things that they want to accomplish with their students, whether it's literacy or whether it's math or whether it's social emotional learning or bringing in that aspect of just play and creativity, that there's just not enough time to fit it all into the program. And so we've got these excellent teachers whose heart are really there for the children, but when it comes down to it, it just comes down to a matter of time. What we are currently doing in math is working very well. Our students are showing a lot of growth, but it could be even better than it is. Currently, we have all the resources that we need for our students to be successful. What we're lacking is the time. When we look at a math lesson, we have to think, okay, today I could do this, or I could do this. We have to teach one lesson across a variety of days. If we had more time, we would be able to teach that lesson in one day and hit all the components. We could spend the rest of the days reteaching and giving the students more application time to apply all that they are learning. In a half-day time frame, we kind of have to pick and choose, depending on the lesson and depending on the needs of our students, what specific learning activities we're going to incorporate. And while we do try to touch on portions of those, just with the time that we have, it can be difficult to always incorporate a wide variety of learning experiences. So I think a full-day kindergarten program would allow for just more variety of ways to best meet the needs of our students. Has been great. One of the really nice things is I get to take the curriculum provided by the district and then I get to build on that. So it gives a really good opportunity to use a variety of learning styles. So for example, for a phonics lesson, I can do an oral language piece, we can do something tactile, we can do kinesthetic. So I get to just spend more time and I really make sure that I can hit all the different learning styles of the kids and they're going to get it in some way, shape, or form, whatever it is that we're working on. One of the other really great things about the full day program too is I can bring in play-based activities that are still aligned to what the curriculum is. And especially with some of the programs we have, like with Eureka Math, there's already a lot of play-based things that are built into that curriculum, and I can spend time on those. I don't have to kind of skip and choose. I can do the full lesson and get those really fun parts in that I know the kids are going to enjoy, and they'll get more out of the lessons too. When we're looking at those 6 C's, those 21st century learning skills, so one of the things that seems to be the first thing that goes when we are crunched for for time is that creativity piece. And so when the students have more time to be working, that gives their brain more time to think and to be more creative. And it gives the teacher more time for the students to be looking at, ooh, how can I combine these things together? How can I add a little bit more creativity? Another piece is that collaboration. When we're crunched for time, we don't always give time for students to sit and talk to one another and really have that great dialogue and discussion. Another piece of that I would see is really that citizenship or that character. We have time then to have a class meeting where we're talking about issues in our classroom, or whether it's scheduled every day or, hey guys, we just need to come together to work on this. That really fits in with that as well. There's just a different energy when the kids have actual long stretches of time to work as opposed to the day being broken up into little choppy segments. It definitely mentally prepared them better for the rigor of first grade.
So fun. What you viewed in the video is incredible. And we know a full day program provides us with the time to make the learning experiences for our youngest learners even better. Of course, we must keep our district's future-focused framework, vision, mission, and goals at the forefront of our planning. In our quest to be a national leader in future-ready learning, we need to face the fact that we are within only 21% of the school districts within the whole state of Illinois who are not yet providing all-day kindergarten. As a new principal to the district this year, and coming from a district who had all-day kindergarten, I am wondering why we are not yet providing our youngest learners with the same robust, integrated, and interdisciplinary learning opportunities as the rest of our students. D205 is a district with the resources and means to provide this group of students with the best. And by the best, I mean increased time for the application of learning, as well as the enhancing of character education, citizenship, communication, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and problem solving. The best also includes time for purposeful play, developing memory, language, and behavior, as well as increased opportunities for engaged learning. Further research finds that children adjust well to the full-day format. While some parents worry that full-day kindergarten is too much for young children, research shows that 5-year-olds are more than ready for a longer day, and that they do better in a setting that allows them time to learn and explore activities in depth. A 2014 study at the University of Virginia showed sizable learning advantages for full-day students at the end of the kindergarten year. Most notably, the advantage for Hispanic full-day students over other Hispanic kindergartners was nearly double. The study also calculated that full-day kindergarten produces greater learning gains per dollar spent than other well-known early education interventions like Head Start and class size reductions. Our district's future-focused framework, beliefs, and guiding principles call for the best, and that means increased time to further nurture a culture of shared responsibility for student growth and to make decisions that are future-focused for our entire community of learners, including even our youngest. Brooke Klein will now share more about the benefits of an all-day kindergarten program.
Hi, my name is Brooke Klein. I'm a special education teacher at Jackson Elementary School. One important benefit of all-day kindergarten is the time for social-emotional learning. Social-emotional learning promotes appropriate problem solving, interpersonal relationships, and social skills practice. These behaviors take time to learn. Early teaching and practice in these skills promotes long-term effects of the 6 C's. With a full-day kindergarten program, students will have an enriched experience in these social-emotional learning. Next, Jeanette will explain what this could look like for teachers and students in District 205.
Hello, I'm Jeanette Kling. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Field Elementary School. Research and experience tell us that play has a profound influence on a child's development. Adults often think of play as something that kids get to do when the work is done. However, children show us over and over again that play is the way that they work. During purposeful play, teachers scaffold or demonstrate how to solve problems, then step back and offer support to students as needed. Increasing engagement through play allows the students to make discoveries, build knowledge, and experiment with literacy and math. They learn to self-regulate, negotiate, and interact with others in socially appropriate ways. Students hone their executive functioning skills through mental processes that enable them to plan, focus attention, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks successfully. Above all else, play is fun and interesting, which makes school a place where children want to be, and they look forward to spending their time with us. Play is purposeful and meaningful for the intellectual and social development of children and should be at the heart of the early childhood learning experiences in District 205.
Good evening. My name is Abby Udelhoffen, and I am a kindergarten teacher at both Hawthorne and Jackson Elementary Schools. Currently, in our district, we have all that we need, including the enabling factors from the future-focused framework that Jen previously referenced. We have a high-quality teacher in every classroom. We have strong leadership throughout all levels of the organization. We have community input and engagement. We have research and performance-based decision-making. We have the curriculum and resources that we need. What we are lacking is the time to educate students in a developmentally appropriate way. On the screen, you will see what our current half-day schedule looks like. You'll see that math is about 25 minutes long, and writing can only occur 2 times a week. This is due to other areas of the curriculum that we have to teach in that time frame other days, including science, social studies, and health. As you will also see, there is no developmentally appropriate, purposeful play. We are missing that developmentally appropriate practices such as play-based learning, the application of learning, social-emotional learning, as Brooke previously discussed, and STEM opportunities. If we were provided the opportunity and time for full day, here is what our schedule could look like.
A full-day schedule differs from the half-day schedule in several ways. The benefit of additional time allows us to begin the day with a morning routine that allows students to communicate and collaborate with peers through morning meetings, and which provides time to incorporate and combine purposeful play with fine motor activities during morning work. From there, we have dedicated time for calendar and numeracy activities that support math fluency. In the current half-day program, fluency and application skills are traded off from lesson to lesson in an attempt to provide enough time for concept development and problem set practice. As you can see, there is time in this schedule in the afternoon for math workshop. This is when teachers will introduce concept development through mini lessons and allows time for application problems and skill development. Teachers can provide small group strategy instruction to accommodate individual student needs and still have time to conclude the lesson with the student debrief. An increase of 20 minutes daily allows for all 5 components of the Eureka Math lesson to be covered throughout the day. The full-day schedule also allows us to provide a more balanced approach to literacy instruction. The schedule provides an increase in time from 20 to 40 minutes for phonics, phonemic awareness, and word study. Increasing the literacy block from 40 to 60 minutes also allows teachers to build a literacy-rich classroom that includes all components of reading workshop. Time for reading mini lessons, interactive read-alouds, opportunities for shared reading, as well as time for independent reading. The additional combined 40 minutes gained from the extra time in phonics and literacy instruction allows teachers to meet with 2 additional guided reading groups each day and allows teachers to read with every student every day, instead of the current practice of reading with every student twice a week. The additional time spent in small group guided reading instruction will help teachers meet the district goal established by Fontes and Pinnell guidelines that all kindergarten students read at a level D by the end of the school year. Another benefit of the full-day schedule allows for writers' workshop and social studies or science to be teased out and to take place daily rather than twice weekly. Increasing writing instruction from 75 minutes each week to 175 minutes will ensure that teachers have time to conference and set writing goals with students during the writers' workshop. Science and social studies instruction will increase from 50 minutes per week to 150 minutes per week and will allow us to integrate next generation science standards and National Council for Social Studies standards into the curriculum through STEM and project-based learning opportunities. The final difference that you'll notice are the opportunities for socialization built into and throughout the full-day schedule. Students in a half-day kindergarten program do not have adequate time to participate in daily recess or social play. As a result, we've seen an increased need for social emotional learning opportunities as well as interventions. There is time built into this schedule for speech pathologists and social workers to push into the classroom during social language group times to authentically develop communication skills and to help cultivate a relationship-driven collaborative classroom environment. The students can then apply the SEL skills learned during social language groups to their social interactions during lunch and recess in the afternoons.
So you've heard about the data that supports all-day kindergarten and how it aligns with the district's future-ready framework and the KPI of having students meet grade level expectations by third grade, how this program allows for the integration of learning, STEM, social and emotional development, which is critical for 21st century learning, and enhanced learning through this type of an all-day kindergarten program. The only question that remains is, what are we waiting for? Before I take questions, I'd like to thank all the members of the committee that worked to develop this presentation, as well as Dr. Christine Perdoza and Katie Brick, who along with our committee members and Kate Alt created that video for you. Is there anybody else that has any questions for me? Please be easy. Or for anybody else up here. It's not just me. Please note, Jane Bailey is here. She also has the all-day kindergarten program inside of her building. So I'm just going ahead and saying she can speak to a little bit more about what that all-day program has afforded for her at the same time. So feel free to ask any great questions that you have.
I have a question. My questions are to the entire group, so whoever would like to answer. Are we better off with all-day kindergarten or a half-day 4-year-old program and then half-day kindergarten?
Well, I think it's a very interesting question because there has been research to go ahead and show that there are benefits to a 4-year-old program. A half-day 4-year-old program as well as a half-day all-day kindergarten program also can be effective, but it's more effective to go ahead and have the 4-year-old preschool program and an all-day kindergarten program.
I guess my other observation is
I'm just speaking what the research has said for that. So
you don't need to convince the board of the necessity of any of this. We're on your side here. It's our community that has to foot the bill.
Sure.
So with that said also, I like the idea of both. I think that probably makes us a leader, right? Instead of one of the 21% that are following. And then my final question is there time, the research I've read says that children are sponges for world languages up until about the time they're 6 years old. And in our current kindergarten, we don't have time, and by first grade, it's not too late, but it's almost too late. Is there time for world language in all-day kindergarten?
Well, I think that right now, when you're going ahead and really trying to look at acquisition of language so kids can really use those skills, I think the dual language program that we have that's formatted, that will start as early as kindergarten and go through 5th grade, are going to develop those biliteracy skills. But also this type of program, a full-day kindergarten program that could allow for more opportunities of more dual language programs, such as like a Chinese immersion program or other kinds of immersion and world language programs too. I think just adding one component of, let's say 20 minutes extra of world language, I think the research has shown that doesn't necessarily always develop the biliteracy component that I think the district is looking for, which is why we've offered an all-day kindergarten dual language program, and that will be full day over at Conrad Fisher for next year.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to emphasize, keep that in mind in our plans of what we can do effectively we are in an ever more global society, and learning languages other than English become more and more important to these kids.
Absolutely.
So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has any questions? Okay.
So just to clarify, in all-day kindergarten, you're not increasing the curriculum. You're stretching what you're already doing across the day and adding in the playtime. That's play, that's purposeful play.
Correct. It's more of enhancing kind of those overall, kids learn best when they're playing or when they're active or when they can apply what they're learning from a sit down lesson. I don't think that you have that opportunity. It doesn't present itself so much because right now there's been so much content that we have to go ahead and make sure that kids have, because they need the reading, they need the math skills, they need those other things to be competitive in the 21st century. I think sometimes we've kind of taken a look to really advance those skills, sometimes at limiting what we're seeing for some of the kids that they need at the same time too. And that's limited due to the time that we don't have with the students at the same time too, to really stretch out those lessons, to give that application of learning time, to provide that time for purposeful play, which is really the work of students at the same time too. At this level, that's how they're building curiosity. They're developing those question skills. They're asking and developing those problem solving and social emotional learning skills that we have lots of concerns from teachers and students in the district about anxiety and other kinds of things like that. When we're coming into kindergarten and the expectation is, boom, we're off learning to the races about academics, and we don't allow for those other things, something gets lost. And I think that's what we're trying to bring back with a full day model, would not be to go ahead and say that we need to add more curricular content. There's enough there already. I think what we need to do is go ahead and provide them still with those great learning opportunities that are strategic for students that are our youngest kids. So really, that's the main point of that, is to try to go ahead and make this a fun, not to say that it's not right now. I don't want to go ahead and get the intention. The kindergarten teachers do a wonderful job with the half-day program. Our kids are doing really well. So this isn't a question that they're not doing well. Could they be doing better, and could we be allowing that time for really developing the whole child? I think that's what we're really talking about here. It's not really just taking one over the other, but without the time, it's really hard to do both well.
Thanks. And just to follow on, so if we were to move forward, seeing as we are a late adopter, I guess you could say, what advantages do you see? Everybody else is doing it, so that's to our benefit to look at all the other programs. Do you see things that we could do, or would you watch observe other programs so that we could, is there a way to make our program not just all-day kindergarten, but, the best of all-day kindergarten?
Absolutely. I think those other opportunities are there. I think going ahead, because in some ways we are later coming into it, I think it really leaves you that time to design well-rounded, wonderful opportunities for students that really extend their learning throughout that time, rather than go ahead and adding those other things in there. We need to have the play. We know those things are important, but we can also go ahead and watch and take some information from what other programs have learned from their implementation and apply it towards when we're moving forward with our actual implementation about what that could look like. So does anybody else have any other questions?
So this question, this is a difficult question. This is not necessarily about why. It's more about how. And the how, and this might be more to the administration also, how do we move forward? What criteria would be necessary in the sense of, do we have to keep a half-day program?
Yes.
Okay, and so if you could share any of that information about what it might look like if the community decided we wanted to move forward, what that might look like in transitioning and moving forward, like what a all-day kindergarten program might look like at the schools. You have any?
That's a really good question. Does anybody else want to take a crack at that one too?
I can help you with that one.
Okay.
So when we began the implementation process in Barrington, for example, we had to offer both half day and full day when we decided to do full day. I mean, it's a state mandate, to offer half-day, although I think kindergarten is not a requirement, but if you're going to offer a program, half-day is necessary. So we started and we offered at every building a full day and a half-day classroom. And based on the numbers, we decided whether we could offer a half-day in the morning or a half-day in the afternoon. And the numbers were only enough for one classroom per building. We also had 8 elementary buildings. So the numbers also throughout the year of that half-day program went down. As students were hearing from their friends and families were hearing from their friends that the experience of the enrichment that is available in a full-day program, they left their other opportunities from whatever, other outside activities they were participating in because they wanted to be part of what their classmates for first grade were going to be participating in. So the second year, our numbers went down, and we hardly had enough in each building for one half-day classroom. By the third year, we had to send kids to other buildings. So if that gives you an indication of, how it works in a district that is, like Elmhurst, the interest is there. And there are people who are not quite ready and they need that half day, but then they see, what's happening with their peers or, their children's peers, and that's what they head toward. You're welcome.
Margaret, that's also been the typical experience of our districts that we studied in the all-day kindergarten study, that the other districts that went to a full-day model had similar experiences with the growth after that first year.
Is there anything else? Thank you very much for your time. We hope you got something from it and it gave you some more things to think about.
Thank you very much, all of you. Okay, next presentation, special ed programming.
Thank you to all of our colleagues. I can confidently speak to everyone that we would agree the benefits of all-day kindergarten, in particular for our students who are receiving services. So thank you to all of our colleagues. Tonight we want to share with you some information about our special education program, provide you with some updates on some things that we have been implementing this year. We brought with us some folks, including one of our students, so thank you for hanging out with us a little later. We appreciate our students' time. As you know, I am the Assistant Superintendent, Kathy Kostic, and I have some other individuals with me, but rather than introduce them as they come up, they will introduce themselves and the role that they have in supporting our students. So tonight for our learning targets, we want to provide our Board of Education and the community an overview to help increase the understanding of our special education continuum of services. When we talk about services delivery for our students with special needs, we always start with general education and we become more restrictive based upon the level of support and level of services that students need. So our goal tonight is to provide you information about each of those different components of the continuum, and then what that instruction looks like, and then the students' characteristics that are most often served in each of those places on the continuum. One of the things to keep in mind is, as you know, students all come in with unique needs and different shapes and sizes, and we work really hard to look at each individual. So we do have students, many of whom receive services at various points during their day along different points in the continuum, and the teachers will talk to that. But I just want you to keep aware that students don't necessarily, and most typically, don't always fit into one space on our continuum. As you know, you were generous in supporting our desire to have instructional coaches with a special education focus. All 4 of them are here this evening. So we'll talk about their role and how that is impacting student learning and the work with the teachers. So we're going to incorporate that into the information we provide about the continuum of services. And last year we shared with you that we were expanding our social emotional services for our students at the high school. So we will share how that program has expanded and the outcomes within that. When you look at the continuum of services, you'll see general education. All of our students are general education students. That's our least restrictive environment. And we always begin looking at how we can support a student with his same age, same grade peers in his or her home school. One of the things as we look across this, we are going tonight talk about in-district services. We of course do have some students, albeit a small number, a small percentage of our students who do continue to receive services in a public day school, a private therapeutic day school, or a residential setting outside of our school district. But tonight we're going to focus on those components in the continuum that are within our district. With each student, the IEP team meets and identifies what are the needs of that student, the goals and the support services, and then determines the level of support within the continuum to meet the needs. And when you're looking at the goals, you're determining what is that student need, what are the outcomes we want to see for him or her, and then where are those services best going to be provided in order for that student to make progress on those goals. And again, reminding that there are students that receive services outside of our district. It's just tonight we want to focus on those things that are within our district.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Stoya, and I'm the special education coach at York High School. And I'm going to talk about the general education student who has an IEP but is in the general education classroom. So this is our least restrictive environment that we have for students. The typical student may or may not have an IEP goal in the content area that they're in the general education classroom for. They could also have an executive functioning goal for organization, time management, things like that. Students access the general education instruction and curriculum with modifications and accommodations. Teachers are given profile sheets for each student at the beginning of the year or the semester. And I work with teachers to go through those profile sheets and help them incorporate the students' needs into their classroom. So we look at, if this person needs to be redirected at certain times, how are you going to work with that student to make them the most successful you can in the classroom? I also work with the coaches if there becomes an issue during the class, throughout the semester, throughout the year. I'll go in and observe a student and work with the teacher to come up with a plan so that that student can continue to be successful within the classroom. The course content, for the most part, is not modified, but the delivery of the content can be modified. So what that means is that it might be broken down more. It might be in a smaller group setting that they get the instruction. We might use the workshop model, and they might work with the gen ed teacher more than another student might. The teacher provides the accommodations, so if it's alternate seating, they provide that accommodation. If they need extra time on their work, if they need an assignment broken down, the gen ed teacher would provide that. And then we as coaches can work with them if they need help doing that and implementing that within the gen ed classroom. Students receive support from the gen ed teacher throughout the day, but not in that setting. So they have a resource period or a time where they'll see a special ed teacher to receive support. So they might get reteaching during that time. They might work on that organizational goal that they have, but that's going to be outside at a different time, and we'll talk about that setting later too. So at the high school level, that might look like a guided study or an academic lit. It's also important to note that some students might be in the gen ed classroom for the majority of their day, but not all their day. So at the high school level, that might mean that they're in English in gen ed, but then they're maybe in a co-taught class for math because that's where they need their needs met more. So it really is a continuum, and it really is individualized by each student. In the picture, you'll see me working with a gen ed teacher about a student who was in his class who needed some things, some projects modified a little bit in that, can he be successful within the group setting, or is it more individual? Does he need more time? So we're meeting the same outcomes, but maybe in a different way. For the teachers that I've worked with this year, the gen ed teachers, they've really appreciated having a special ed coach there to help them when a case manager isn't always available. So a case manager still teaches the same amount of classes as a gen ed teacher does, so they're not always available to help them, to work through these things, to coach them. I'm available for them to come in and work with them, to come in and see the student. It's also helped our students be able to access the gen ed curriculum because there is somebody there to help their teacher and support them. I'm also there to problem solve with teachers, and it allows them to stay in that classroom for longer if there is issues, instead of just moving them to maybe a co-taught class or even a totally separate classroom. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about co-teaching push-in services and what that looks like.
Good evening. My name is Bridget Peterson, and I'm the Special Education Supervisor at Fisher, Jefferson, Hawthorne, and Lincoln. And tonight we're going to speak to you about both push-in services and then a little further down the continuum about pull-out services in the resource model, which are typically at the elementary level. Students require additional support in identified areas of academics or functional performance. Special education teachers can provide support in the general education classroom through team teaching, small group instruction, individual student support, and guided practice. Support could include academic support in areas of reading, writing, and math, support for executive functioning skills, and support for behavior in the general education classrooms. The outcomes we're looking for students who are receiving push-in resource support, we would be looking at their assessment data compared to peers, because they are receiving the same content and the same curriculum as their peers, as well as looking at how they're able to function within the classroom. And now, two other people named Bridget are also going to talk to you about what that looks like.
Hi, my name is Bridget Justin, and I'm a special education resource teacher at Lincoln Elementary School. So my role as a resource teacher in the push-in model is to make sure students have the proper accommodations and instruction in place in the general education setting in order to make progress on their IEP goals, as well as access the general education curriculum. The key to success for the push-in model is really collaboration. I'm constantly collaborating with the general education teachers as well as the instructional coaches in order to come up with instruction that is effective, not just for students who receive special education support, but for the general education students in the classroom as well. An example of that this year has been providing students with guided math when I do push-in. How this is working is me and the general education teacher, we take turn kind of coming up with the main concept for the lesson, and we spend about 10 minutes on that. Then what's been really great is we split up students based on their ability into small groups. So while I'm pushing in, I get to work with a small group of students, again, that receive resource support, as well as general education students that might need reteaching. It also allows the general education teacher to pull a small group as well that might have already reached the concepts and are going above and beyond and need an enrichment activity. So push-in model has been really great for students for special education as well as our general education population.
Hi, I'm Bridget McDonald, there's a lot of Bridget, so, in special education, yeah. But I have had the honor of working with Bridget this year, so I'm just gonna kind of pinpoint our work together and how, as a special ed coach, how we work together to focus our instruction and strategies around student learning. We have worked year-round around collaboration with general education teachers around student learning and instructional practices. We really collaborated, such as identifying specific strategies to focus, especially around guided math, and to support not only our students with IEPs in the classroom, but all students in the classroom, and what role that as a resource teacher can have when pushing into the classroom to support that gen ed teacher. We work together on inclusive planning instruction and co-planning tools, as well as data tools schools to really look at if our instructional practices in the classroom are effective and how we can grow from there. Bridget currently attends 4th and 5th grade PLCs, which includes general education teachers, ELL teachers, and instructional coaches to discuss student learning and to move our students forward. And I've had the pleasure of working with Bridget and creating goals around her instructional practices because of her willingness to grow as an educator around our students with special needs, as well as how she can support students that maybe aren't identified with with needs, but can help them grow also in the classroom. So it's been great.
Oh, sorry. Where's the clicker?
I did it too, that's why.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jason Vanderpla. I'm the middle school special education supervisor. And we're going to talk a little bit about co-teaching and what that looks like in the middle school level. Students who receive co-taught instruction generally have specific academic goals in either reading, writing, or mathematics. And they can also have deficits in executive functioning skills and require additional behavioral supports within the classroom. Students that receive this level of support benefit from being educated alongside their general education peers and do not require intensive pull-out services. Co-teaching provides access to the general education environment to students who benefit from specifically designed instruction from teachers who share responsibility and accountability for all of their students in their classroom. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan Collins and Kelly Harkins. They're one of our co-teaching pairs over at Sandburg Middle School. They co-teach English language arts at the 8th grade level.
Yes, thank you. Well, as said, I'm Kelly Harkins. I teach English at Sandburg.
And I'm Meg Collins. I'm an 8th grade special ed resource teacher at Sandburg.
As you can see from our photo, we love co-teaching. We're big fans. The purpose of our co-teaching, and I'm sure everyone else's, is to narrow the deficit in student learning, both those students who are solely in our general education population and those who receive special education services. Ms. Collins and I aim to create an inclusive environment that models for students an opportunity for learning, growth, and positivity amongst each other and toward our students. We've been co-teaching together now for 2 years, going on our 3rd. So throughout those 2 years, we've been able to really grow in both our curriculum, our instruction practices, and our planning, our ability to be a PLC with each other, and for Ms. Collins to join our PLC. So I meet with my PLC many times a week for English, and Ms. Collins will join that meeting, and then we will also meet separately to plan specific instruction to meet the needs of our students.
And going off of that as well, as a special educator, obviously learning the curriculum might take a little bit of time, and I also co-teach in math class as well. So being able to be with the same person for more than 1 year is really beneficial. We have a great relationship together. So the first year was mostly learning curriculum with Ms. Harkins as well, and the second year has already been leaps and gains ahead of what I was doing last year. We parallel, we are up there in front of each other, 50-50 in front of the classroom. I would say that we have other styles of teaching as well. It's not just one teach and one assist while I'm walking around. I would definitely say curriculum-wise that they both view us as teachers within the classroom.
Absolutely. Speaking about maybe just the benefits for all of the students in our classroom, every single student in our room benefits from having 2 teachers. So everything that goes along with that, building positive relationships, getting feedback quicker, both in person, on assignments, all of that is something that all of the students get. We really share all of that 50-50. All of our students get more opportunities for both reteaching if they're struggling with something or enrichment. So Ms. Collins and I, one of us will take a group almost every day to keep reinforcing that curriculum and helping students grow in whatever they are working on in that moment. We definitely are able to incorporate more varied classroom styles just because there's 2 of us. So we can do a lot of different types of activities, take some more risks in the type of instruction that we are able to do in the classroom because we have each other to lean on and grow from and support the students that way.
And then not only for students who do not receive services, but students who do receive special education services, some benefits for that is having that differentiated instruction, having that special education teacher within the classroom in order to make sure their materials might be accommodated or modified to their specific individual need. And then also, just as a special education teacher, the school climate, being able to not only know the students on your caseload, but being viewed as a teacher and knowing more students within the grade level, having that type of relationship with students who do not receive services. And for students who do receive those special education services, though, do have that contact with their general education classroom, as well as being with students that do not receive services as well.
Throughout the last 2 years, and especially this year, being our second year, we've seen a lot of celebrations and a lot of growth among our students. The reading and writing for the district assessments, our co-taught class definitely, I would say, leads the way in some of that growth. Our students do very well across the board, both students who receive services and students who don't see a lot of growth in reading and writing in our classroom. The students really just love having two teachers. They don't question it at all by the second week of school why there's two of us there. They just know that Miss Harkins and Miss Collins are both there every day, and if one of us is not there, we hear about it the whole day because they really miss having the other one and just having that normal classroom routine. As I mentioned earlier, I think we really do a good job of modeling just a strong atmosphere of learning for students, especially because we're able to model with each other for lessons how, one of us might struggle more with something than the other one, and how we're able to show them our own growth in those areas. The students certainly feel extra supported, extra cared for. They know that they have not one, but two adults to go to if they feel like they need some more challenge, or if they feel like they're a little bit stuck on something and they need some extra support. They know that they have both of us, which is just a great benefit all around.
And we've tried to start that from the beginning of the school year, where we mention you can ask either one of us any questions. From the beginning, both of our names are on the syllabus or the agenda. Parent communication, we both have our names on emails for communication as well. They always say co-teaching is like a marriage, so we always try to make sure that we are both on the same side, on the same team, and things of that nature. So it has a lot of positives, and I really enjoy it. So
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the Bridgets are back to talk about pull-out resource support. So as Kelly talked about before, the majority of the students that we're serving who have special needs here in the district are spending the majority of their day in the general education classroom. And then our teams are supporting those general education teachers to provide their accommodations and differentiated instruction. But there may be times where they're requiring removal from the regular or general education classroom to receive more direct instruction and specialized support in identified areas of need. And those would be things like reading, writing, math, or there may be some executive functioning skills that may also be worked on in a separate setting before they're transferred to the general education setting. And so now Bridget's will talk about what that looks like for you.
So students that receive pull-out services require a more intensive instruction or intervention in order to make progress on their IEP goals or access the general education curriculum. Pull-out services can provide a more structured intervention, such as the Wilson Reading Program, or it can be services that are still focused on the general education curriculum, just in a small, more intensive group. So as you can see in this picture, this is an example of my math pull-out group. This is a group of fourth graders that I see every day as a pull-out service for half of their math block. And like I said again before, we're still focusing on the general education curriculum. We're just working on it in a smaller, more intensive group. As you can see, we do a lot of visuals, hands-on materials, and I'm constantly collaborating with our instructional coach on how to further structure my small pull-out group. Another example of pull-out services that focus on general education curriculum that I implement is in the area of writing. Students are still working on their general education writing assignments, however it is done in a structured environment. We work on things like creating checklists and task organizers to break down the larger writing task into smaller, more obtainable tasks. Students can also receive pull-out services if they require some breaks throughout the day, or if they are required to take their classroom assessments in a smaller, quieter environment.
And I'll make this short. So I work with teachers on observing their teaching in the smaller classroom with these students because they have more unique needs. It's really been helpful to talk about different resources they can use with these students and different strategies to work around the students to move them along. So that's how the coach, me and Bridget, have been working this year, is really taking a look at how she's teaching in this smaller group and what these students might need as far as resources. We've worked a lot about pulling new resources together and seeing the effectiveness of those resources for these students.
I found it. Hi, I'm Kim James. I'm one of the elementary special ed supervisors. I cover Edison, Emerson, Jackson, and Field. And the next step on our continuum of services is our self-contained instructional classes. The teacher that I had come, she had a flat tire on her way home from school, had her kids, it was a big mess. So I do have my special education instructional coach to help me with her part. Students in instructional classrooms require a higher level of instructional supports throughout their day for academic, language, emotional, and/or behavioral struggles. We have programs at 3 of our elementaries and all of our middle schools. So, and 3 next year, we'll have the K through 5. The desired outcome of this level of support is to give students the strategies and skills needed for independence with their peers academically and socially. Heather Nonsock is our special education instructional coach. She'll be speaking on behalf of Lindsay to share more detail about these classrooms.
Thank you. So as mentioned, we have our instructional classrooms. We usually within our school settings have a primary instructional classroom and then an intermediate at the elementary level. Generally, these classrooms consist of 8 to 11 students and multiple grade levels. So to kind of give you guys an idea, if you were to walk into one of those classrooms, you could see a variety of different models and teaching strategies going on. So depending on that timing and scheduling, you may see a whole group lesson where the kids are all together with that teacher getting probably more of an overview of skills. You would also see a lot of guided reading and guided math groups because that's ways where we can go ahead and have those kids in small group to get really targeted instruction. You may at times see students working one-on-one with that teacher to really dig into the learning that they need to have done. And then at times too, you'll also see those kids working independently in a really highly structured environment with our goal again to be if we can foster independence within that setting, we can continue to generalize it to the general education classroom. Overall too, and what I was looking forward to Lindsay talking to is some of our work together this year, so I'll try and highlight the best that I can. Thinking of an example of more recently of what some of that looks like is our planning around writing. So within that classroom, we have kids in kindergarten through 2nd grade and looking overall to meet their needs within writing. So some of that planning and where we start is always with our Common Core standards as well as what's going on in the general education classroom. We then also look at the needs of our students and go ahead and kind of back map from those Common Core standards, what is our overall goals and where do we want those kids to achieve? And currently, where are they at and what can we do to scaffold our instruction to meet them there? So what Lindsay and I went ahead and did, we decided the best structure would be to go ahead and have a mini lesson set up where those kids would go ahead and get some of that information whole group. And a lot of that was to increase speaking and listening and to give those opportunities so they could address those standards that way, give them ways to talk through some brainstorming around writing, and then we went ahead and did more guided writing practice within individual groups to go ahead and increase those skills. Overall, it was really great to see. I was just in there the other week and she went ahead and shared with me some portfolios of student work that she gathered. And initially when we first started the lesson around opinion writing, those students were usually writing about 1 sentence. They were staying on topic. She was able to share with me some work samples now, and a lot of where she has some of those kids in their learning is they can go ahead, give their opinion, give 3 to 4 descriptors that support their beliefs and continue to stay on topic while also writing in full sentences and drawing a picture that correlates. So we've seen a lot of really cool student achievement with that and some really good deep discussions around what we're doing. So that process that I kind of shared with writing, we also do around reading and math as well. So, yep. And then we're also going to have Maureen and Megan share what instructional looks like at the middle school level.
All right, thank you. I'm Megan Inke. I'm an instructional teacher at Sandburg Middle School. I teach both instructional English and instructional math. So a lot of what Heather said is very similar in middle school. students in the instructional classroom, we look at the curriculum, the gen ed curriculum. We look at the focus standards, the essential questions. What is the end goal that we want students in the instructional English class to understand? And then we choose materials that are at the text level of them. Their reading levels, and we look at that at the beginning of the year and then again at the end of the year. And in the classroom for instructional English, it can be whole group, it can be small group, it can be independent work. It really will vary on the students within that classroom and what they're working on. When we do look at the gen ed curriculum, we look at what they're teaching. So if they're teaching citing evidence or looking at theme, we'll work on that also in the instructional classroom, but just with modified materials that are meeting their needs at their level. We still hold them to very high standards just at their instructional level. We just give them the time, the attention, and the structure that they really need to meet those standards. As I said, I also teach instructional math, and Maureen has been a huge help in helping me structure my math class this year. So she's going to talk a little bit about the math class and what we created to make it look like.
I'm Maureen Schroeder. I'm the special ed instructional coach for all 3 middle schools. And I've been working with Megan, probably one of the hardest working teachers here in the district, my opinion. But for Megan's instructional math class, she has about 11 students in there, and they're about varying about 4 different ability levels. So in order to create that instruction and meet the students' needs, we decided to do sort of like a workshop model or guided math. Those are the kind of the terms that you've been hearing tonight, where Megan will start them as a whole group, and then they will break off into rotating stations. She will have time with those students individually, and then they'll rotate to an independent station, maybe working with a teaching assistant, and the other station would be probably like a computer where they do Zern or Khan Academy in the independent work. So we have been using district curriculum, Eureka Math, and other resources to kind of meet their needs and hit these learning standards. Megan has done a fabulous job as kind of keeping those standards and those expectations high for her students, and have incorporated some good hands-on learning for them too.
So the hands-on learning is really important, especially for students in the instructional classroom. They really benefit from that hands-on, real-world experience, using manipulatives. They recently finished project-based learning. A couple weeks ago we finished. They were to design a store. They had to open their own store. They had to create a store name. They had to choose items to sell. They created a survey, sent it out to other peers and teachers. They got the results back. They had to decide based on their results what would be the best things to sell in their store. They had to make a layout using multiplication. We did a grid. They created that, and then they calculated how much money they would end up making from their store using their multiplication facts, adding, subtracting. They were able to put it up onto a poster, present it to the class, and then the class gave them all feedback, positives that they did really well, things they liked about their presentation. So then the students got their feedback back from their peers, and it was a really cool project. The students really enjoyed it. They were excited. Maureen was there the day we presented.
And the students were very proud. They were very clear about what they did, and you can tell that the learning targets were hit.
Yes.
So it was really, really exciting to see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Brendan Mixon. I'm the special ed supervisor at York High School. Here to talk about 2 different slides. One is the one that's up there. We're going to talk about our district-wide special ed programs. Those are the ones where the students that require the most needs. If you're in a smaller district, some of these students wouldn't even attend their home school, so they would attend private therapeutic days. We're a larger district, so we house them in various sites. We have one at Edison, one at Hawthorne, one at Sandburg, and then one at York, and we also have our transition center, which would be considered a district-wide. So I'm actually speaking on behalf of Jill Mueller. She was unable to make it tonight. She's attending a senior level choral concert that was planned on a whim, so she apologizes for not being here, but she wanted to let me know that In this setting, it's generally they work on a functional and a vocational curriculum. They kind of want them to prepare on how to be career ready and how to work on life skills. So that's kind of built from a K-12 or K to the day before their 22nd birthday curriculum. They've been working, they formed a transition task force this year, or actually earlier last year, and they've been working on sequencing that curriculum and building in all kinds of transition supports from actually 3, if Susan's still in here, so age 3 to 22. So they have a comprehensive program. But what I really wanted to talk about is last year I stood here at this time and we talked about a program where I was going to start where we were going to start a program with more social emotional supports. It was going to be a self-contained program that was going to be housed at York. We didn't have a name for it yet, and we were going to have a teacher and a social worker. I have the teacher and the social worker here, and we actually have a student with them that has gone into the program and has experienced some serious success. So they're going to tell their story. So here's Tyler King, Kelly McGarry, and the student Sabrina Citron.
Hi, I'm Tyler King. I'm a special education teacher at York, and for those of you who haven't been at York, there's about 3,000 students and 300 faculty members, and if you walk through the hallways during a passing period, there is a lot going on, and it can be overwhelming. And that caused a lot of students to have anxiety, and we've seen an increase. As I sat here today, I heard that word come up a couple times, and we needed to have a way to solve that at the high school level. We saw a lot of students being outplaced as a result of these, and our program was able to get implemented thanks to Brandon, and it drastically reduced the number of outplaced students that we've had this year, and it has increased graduation rates for our senior students. Ms. Sabrina has been amazing this year. I've had a pleasure to working with her starting in October, and she could tell you a little bit about the things that have benefited her. But our classroom is just designed in order to give the students a smaller self-contained setting where they feel comfortable and they could get that additional social support, support with transition and what they're going to be doing after high school. Just the setting that they feel comfortable in at York versus 3,000 kids and kind of that overwhelming feeling that you could get being in that big high school setting. So I'm going to let Kelly McGarry talk about some of the things that she has done this school year from the social work standpoint.
And if you guys were confused, I am not the student. I know sometimes I get asked in the hallway, like, where's your pass? But again, my name is Kelly. I am a full-time social worker for the Access program, which stands for A Calm Classroom Ensuring Student Success. The students actually came up with the program name in the beginning of the year, so that is really cool. And so what's really unique about my job here at York is that I'm a full-time social worker just for the program. So right now I see all the only students I see are in the program, which right now I have about 13 students that I'm seeing for social work individual minutes, but also for group. And so something that makes this group so special is that they get to meet all together for a social work group that I provide daily. And so that's 8th period. Everyone comes together and we'll be working on some of their skills to manage their emotions better and also just to regulate their emotions throughout the day and throughout their lives. And so that is something that is really unique to the program. There's a few therapeutic components that are embedded into the program. Attached to this little classroom piece that you see in the picture, we have a sensory-like room. We call it the chill room. That's where people or students that are dysregulated within their school day can kind of take that break that they need. We also have a morning online check-in where students can look at, kind of rate where their stress levels are and where their anxiety level is and go from there. If it's high, then they get to pick a skill that they're going to work on in that individual day. And that's a good way for me or Mr. King to kind of gauge where some of our students are at every day. And then on top of that, we also have a daily point check-in sheet where the students are able to reflect on how they feel they did that certain day and kind of what skills they need to increase. And then then we're also able to work it out with them on how we saw their behaviors and their thought process throughout the day. And then the last thing that I provide is guardian meetings for the guardians of the students of the program. And so that's usually monthly, and that gives the parents a chance to support one another and then to learn some of the skills that I'm also going over with their children throughout the day. And so I'm going to hand it over to Sabrina to give her story. But yeah, we are very proud of her, and she will be graduating this year. So awesome.
Yeah. My name is Sabrina, and I'm a senior at York High School. And to give you guys an idea of how much Access has helped me, I had started this year in a meeting getting ready to plan for my 5th year going into York. I was pretty devastated with that, but I was determined to do as much as I could, and I was transitioned into Access after an outpatient stay. And just like right off the bat, I got into my online classes, and Mr. King and Miss McGeary were there to help me whenever needed. And I really got the ball rolling after I had started to complete some of my online courses, and it became more realistic that I was going to be walking across the stage with my peers that I've grown up and been in class with my whole life. And it got easier and easier throughout that. And like it's been stated before, Access, all the students in there have really independent and personalized days, but we all pull together and meet like 8th period and finish the day out strong, talking together. And every day is a different topic we focus on when we come together at the end of the day, whether that be thought reframing, mindfulness, preparation for the future. And I have to say it's bittersweet that this is Access's first year and my last year at high school. I definitely wish I had it way more. It's crazy that I'm graduating this year. And honestly, I just owe it all to Access. None of this would have been possible without everyone coming together. And I'm just so thankful that I've been able to come in. And like I said before, it really is bittersweet because this would have helped my high school experience so much. And I thank you guys for taking the time to listen to me. And I'm really thankful for everything that's been offered to me here. Thank you.
I'm making awesome
So just a quick wrap up with that. So with the numbers, last year we brought back 6 students from private therapeutic days. 4 of them went into the Access program. And last year also, when I started my job, we had 2 outplacements within the first 2 weeks of my job. Outplacements are kind of high stress, high pressure, lots of resources are committed with that process. This year we've only had 1. So the Access program has turned around the outplacements, and also being at York, we can provide the therapeutic component and then also allow them the access to a top level high school, and they can get their art classes, they can get their electives, whereas if we have to outplace, they don't get the best part of it. So committing these resources, I mean, you can see it firsthand. Sabrina has completely changed her fate. Like, she enjoys York. It's great to see her here on an everyday basis. So thank you.
Okay, well, sadly, I have to follow that with data, which isn't going to be quite as compelling. I personally was thrilled to find out that Learning and Teaching was going to adopt the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment system at the end of last school year, because I knew the mountain of data that our teachers were going to receive and what that was going to do to drive their teaching and to help increase student learning. And so we saw that as an opportunity to provide some individualized professional learning for our staff. And so at the beginning of the school year, when all the grade levels were meeting to learn about the benchmark assessment system, we pulled the special education teachers to provide them an individualized professional development that allowed them to ask questions that were related to their students and have some discussion among other professionals. And to do that, throughout the year, the instructional coaches have led professional learning related to the benchmark assessment system, and the Fontes Fountas and Pinnell continuum of literacy learning and how that relates to student learning and how we can use that to drive IEP goals and also instruction. In our self-contained classes, we purchased the Fountas and Pinnell Leveled Literacy Intervention, which is an intense guided reading intervention meant for students who are grade level or more behind in reading. And our teachers have used that to help implement small group instruction within their classrooms. The teacher feedback on the use of the Fountas and Pinnell benchmarks assessment system has been that it has been invaluable this year, giving them more insight into their student as a reader, where they need to provide that direct instruction so that they're able to progress in their reading, and just gives them more insight into the student as versus the assessments that we had before. And then when we're looking at the data, Marianne was kind enough to do some analysis for us, and we looked at the average change in Fountas and Pinnell level from fall to winter. It's important to note that in kinder and first grade, there are more ranges, whereas once you get to second grade, it's 3 levels per grade moving up. But so we had students who increased across all levels on an average of 1.5 or more, which is really great to see. So.
We talked about coaching at length as you were hearing from the different teachers and staff, so thank you. But we also had administered a survey at the beginning of the year, and then again most recently. Dr. Henderson at the next board meeting is going to go into a lot of details, so I have just pulled out some of the highlights because I certainly don't want to usurp how our information related to special education coaching fits with all the feedback that we've got in instructional coaching in general. But we set goals for ourselves, and we have met those goals in terms of the percentage of teachers that we wanted to meet and reach in terms of special education. And we also set specific goals for how many general education teachers we wanted to meet and how we would increase that. We did it a percentage, but we also looked at the number of teachers per building, and we set a goal of at least 5 general education teachers in each of the buildings, a little higher at York. And we met those goals. And one of the ways that we're reaching general education teachers, I think you heard them talk about when they're working with students who are working with both the special education teacher and the general education teacher, it's great to be able to pull in that general education teacher. And we, of course, increased the number of individuals. By that I mean teachers that were receiving coaching from the first to the second trimester. One of the challenges that we did anticipate was that our special education coaches at the K-8 level are in multiple buildings, and how would we make that work? And we kind of went back and forth a little bit. We started at the beginning of the year with a day of the week, and would that match the day that the special education supervisor was there? That wasn't quite working, so about the end of October we switched to trying to pin half days that they would be at buildings, that the teachers would know they were there, but we needed that flexibility because plan time changes throughout the week. So that's been working better. One of the questions we asked on our most recent survey was their accessibility, and that was very strongly and agree across the board that they're making themselves accessible. And one of the things that we didn't measure formally, but we have been, I will speak on behalf of the special education coaches, the coaches assigned to the buildings have been gracious and welcoming, and our special education coaches have been able to partner with them. And one of the sort of anecdotal things that I will share with you is the other day at our coaches meeting where they were all there across the district, one of the coaches told me they needed their own Heather. And I said, well, I'll work on that. And so others overheard and said, yes, we need our own as well, which is a great sign because that's how they're seeing the value of our coaches. The types of support, and the ones that are underlined are the most common that we were seeing of those instructional strategies and planning for instruction. And the coaches talked about some of that already. those are the things that both the special education teachers and the general education teachers said that when they were working with the coaches, those were the types of support that we were seeing. One of the interesting things, and Mary will talk about that, I looked at just the feedback from those who were speaking about the special education coaches, and even those individuals that have only worked with them 1 or 2 times reported the impact for their work with students very high. And I was a little surprised that if they had only worked with them 1 or 2 high, at how I think it was like 75% of them agreed that it had a very positive impact on the work that they were doing with students. And of course, those individuals that worked with them 5 or 6 times, it was very high, but I was surprised when I filtered down to those individuals that said they were working with them only once or twice. So we're getting very positive feedback in that regard. Did a quick Wordle on just some of the open-ended impact statements, and that's what we saw. The next slide just shares, and I'm not going to read those, but you can read those at your leisure, of just some of the comments that our special education and our general education teachers gave us about the special education coaching. So very excited about that and looking forward to setting our goals for next year and the second year of the program. Jason, you want to join me?
Thanks for advancing that for me this time. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the co-teaching model at the middle school level. So during the 2016-17 school year, second semester, we started to implement co-teaching. We started with 2 teams per middle school building. So each of the schools had 2 teams. And they were provided a great deal of professional development as well as coaching from our cooperative, SACID. They had some coaches. This fall, co-teaching was expanded to the ELA, to ELA and math at all grade levels at the middle school, including reading specialists and EL teachers. And again, students that receive this level of support benefit from being educated alongside their general education peers and do not require intensive pull-out services, with the outcome of narrowing students' educational deficits in their least restrictive environment.
As Megan and Kelly stated, they had been together last year, but they were one of a very few co-teaching partners at middle school. High school had more to begin with and expanded this year as well. So in working with the SACID coaches, one of the things we did in the last couple of weeks, each of the principals and I and the SACID coaches and sat down with the partners at each of the schools separately and did a nice focus group. Brandon has some feedback too. When we looked at this, both the high school and the middle school mirror this. You heard Megan and Kelly talk about this, of the students viewing both adults as the teachers. It really does allow for some of those teaching practices that involve that flexible grouping, whether that be parallel teaching, whether that be smaller group station work. They're seeing increased student engagement. The small group attention, and again, not just with students who may be receiving services through special education or EL services or reading specialists, but all students, and that the teachers are reporting what they're learning from one another and their sharing of ideas. That flexibility has been key. And the biggest piece has been their ability to differentiate, and this is the feedback that we got from the teachers.
And ultimately, it's for the kids. This gives the access for students who may traditionally be in a smaller classroom to have access to a general ed curriculum. So when you have the general ed curriculum within the co-teaching setting, you see a reduction in behaviors, you see an increase in learning. So it's an ideal setting, and it's the best LRE.
And one of the things when we look at outcome for student learning is we said they're assessed the same way as their gen ed peers. And we're going to talk a little bit about more what that grading profile looks at the high school. Some of the challenges is with everything. There's always some challenges. The biggest piece is the consistency of the planning time. A little stronger at York. One of the things that, as you're aware, we did a pretty significant change to the middle school schedule, and that first part of the year, teachers were working through how do we make sure that those co-teaching partners have time within their week to plan. Megan shared that she co-teaches both an ELA and a math, so that planning time those teachers have to be pretty stuck, if you will, because Megan doesn't have the flexibility, or a special education teacher or a reading specialist. If they're working with more than one co-teacher, they have to make sure that that time is stuck. So the principals are going to be looking at some logistics and how we can make sure that's more consistent. The value of sticking together. They want to stick with the people that they've been with. And again, there's always changes in schedules, but we're hoping we're able to make as many pairs stay together as they have been. And then one of the other things is our goal all along has been to transition. We had so many new pairs that we did bring in staff ed coaches, and our goal will be to transition to using our own coaches as the co-teachers become more comfortable with this.
So just quickly, you can kind of see how our co-taught classes kind of line out. As you can see, most supports kind of come in the science classes. The reason that's a little bit higher is because the science classes kind of embed both skill levels with math and with reading. And traditionally, they've been a little bit more difficult than the other classes. So having more students recommended for those areas. As you see, the bars kind of dip down. The classes, as they get up in age, we see less students attend or need the services. We were able to secure more FTE this year. We offered new English 9, U.S. History, and College Lit were added to the docket. It's been great to have them because we're able to support those students instead of having to move them into a more restrictive instructional environment.
Can we do the next slide? This was the grade. Can we do that? Okay. When we pulled the grades from each of the co-taught courses in the previous slide, it got really crazy and really, really difficult to read because there are so many courses. So what I did, because these 3 courses are sequential, and again, these are all general education courses, and so we looked at the performance of the students who have an IEP versus the students in the same course that do not have an IEP. And again, you can see that there are some differences between the grade that the students earned, and again, that includes all of their assessments. So they're taking the same assessments, they're doing the same writing, the same literature that their non-IEP students are receiving. And if you looked at any one of those courses, you would see this breakdown in a very similar pattern, but there's just so many courses and so many kids. I just chose these 3 to demonstrate the outcomes for the students in the co-taught. Thank you. That was a lot of information, a little longer than we thought. We apologize, but we did appreciate the opportunity to share with you. One of the things I did want to say is, even though we had people from a specific level that talked about one space on the continuum, it was just in the interest of we couldn't have every building and every level from each space on the continuum. So questions?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. And I'm wondering how you've been able to communicate all of these great new programs, co-teaching, the access group to parents so they're aware of the services that we have.
One of the things, when you think about the IEP meeting and the individual needs, as our supervisors, and the principals too, the principals know of these programs, and certainly our supervisors are the most well-versed. It's a part of the work that we do at the district level when we get about an hour and a half a week where we're able to meet and talk about some things. When we start looking at the needs that the students have, we will talk with parents about those different things. One of the things that we have done more often over the last couple of years is I call it blurring the lines a little bit. So if you talk about students that might need an instructional math class, but maybe a co-taught ELA. Brandon shared at the high school, you'll see fewer courses at the 10th and 11th grade of some of those co-taught because we're trying to transition those students back into the gen ed and a little bit heavy loading at the freshman and sophomore year. So we're talking about that with parents at those IEP meetings. And then as we moved into middle school, we did a transition meeting with parents that were moving to middle school this year, and we shared some of that specific. And then we meet with the preschool parents. Susan host that, and the supervisors and I have been attending that.
And also at York, we do an informational night.
Sorry.
At York, during the parent night and informational nights, the division chairs kind of put on the whole scope and sequence of the events, so we can go over what every line on the continuum would look like for any special education student, all the way from the gen ed to the access program. So some parents will ask questions. To get to access, you kind of, it's not like what everyone's kind of shooting for. I mean, it is very nice. It presents very pretty. However, we always want to kind of go through that continuum before we get into the program.
And even when you think about co-taught or general education, our responsibility, what we need to be doing as educators, and parents want this too. Parents are a part of that IEP team. You're looking at what is the least restrictive environment. So even though there might be a co-taught classroom, if that child doesn't need that, if he is able to perform and his goals being met and him making progress with that resource support or with that teacher making those accommodations and modifications, we're going to recommend that, because that's our responsibility to make sure that students are in the least restrictive environment. And sometimes there's a safety net there, and we support that, but we are always pushing toward that least restrictive environment where students can be successful.
So with that, give us an idea, how does that happen? I mean, so how do you get the comfort level so that it's a good experience for the student? And
through student data, the students all have IEP goals, which are individualized, and the teacher is reporting on those goals, and then you're looking at the level of support, like what accommodations the student is using, and you're looking at success. And it's also never written in stone, just because it started in August, it might look different in October. It just depends on the student. We just want to make sure that we're always looking, Brandon shared with me today, he exited 2 students from special education services. So, and we see students like that at the younger grades too, that maybe they were in our preschool receiving services, and we're talking with families, he's doing very well, or she's really making a lot of progress. When they start mirroring academic and functional performance of that of their gen ed peers with accommodations, then we're talking about pulling back on that support.
so transitioning back into the general education classroom, is that what you're saying?
Right.
And that's, I guess I'm trying to get a sense of, how do you make that, we're doing that more. So if we've had general education teachers that haven't experienced that before, it's relatively new to them.
Sure.
How do we make that transition smoother for that student, but also the teacher that's there? I guess that's what I'm trying to get a sense of when you say we pull in the general education teacher. I'm not sure I get a sense of what
the general education teacher would be a part of the IEP team meeting. The special education teacher, we gave some examples of the special education teacher and the general education teachers meeting and planning. You might do some push-in support. There might be an assistant in there very closely monitoring it, but even before, that's never a surprise to a family. One way or another, we want to be transparent. We want to say this is what we're seeing. And we're excited if a student is pushing more towards that general education environment. So we would be showing them the data. And remember, even when they're in a special education classroom, we're using the general education curriculum, and it's aligned to the general education standards. So that student, again, you're not like dropping that student in there cold with a whole new curriculum. That what they saw today might be what they see tomorrow in that gen ed classroom, and maybe you're even sending that support with him for a short period of time to make sure that he or she is successful. We want to make sure that that happens. For students that might be transitioning back to general education to our homeschool, we have a couple other students, not just at York, that will be transitioning back. Like, they might come for one part of their day for part of the year, spend part of the year at a private therapeutic day or a public day setting, come back, and we slowly lengthen the amount of time that they're in their homeschool.
And we try to have the same curriculum for all of our students, right?
I thought that's what I'm kind of hearing through this presentation.
All of
as
our
much as we can.
Yes, they're aligned to the same standards, but some students, depending on the significance or the complexity of their needs, the activity or the learning is aligned to that standard. But when it starts to look so significantly different than that of the gen ed peers, that's when you're going to see that more restrictive, because they need that use of perhaps alternative materials, really small group instruction, sometimes one-on-one.
So I wanted to thank you all, very much for this presentation. My understanding is that, you're kind of giving us what happens now, and then this upcoming year is a program review, and so we'll hear about it more. So first off, thank you. And Sabrina, I wanted to say thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here. And congratulations to you, and what a great success story. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.
Okay, anybody else? Chris?
Actually, a couple questions. How does this look different than when it did, say, 4 or 5 years ago?
I've been here 4 years, so I can share with you some of the feedback that I received when I came in, some things that, honestly, some of the families that expressed to me that they were frustrated with. And one of the things, these might be my words, so it's that students were not necessarily being viewed as the ability to look at it from a flexible programming, that if they were in a certain room, they were in there all day, and they weren't seeing the growth that they would want to see in student learning, and they did not feel like they were having the access to their general education peers as much. So the supervisors, the principals, the teachers have really worked hard on making sure that we are looking at each student as an individual. We've done a lot more with, as students are moving from one level to the next, we've done a lot of parents going with the supervisors and the teachers and visiting classrooms and being able to lay their eyes on, especially if you're a first-time parent to that level. You have all of the first-time parent things to a specific level, and then you layer that with you have a child that has perhaps significant learning needs. It's hard to envision what that might look like. The other thing that we have done, I believe to a greater extent, based on the information that I was given, Mr. Bloom, is the professional learning. So all of our special education teachers, when we are rolling out a new curriculum, our special education teachers are sitting right next to their gen ed peers, so they know what is in the gen ed curriculum. And rather than using alternative curriculums as the first go-to, we are always starting with the gen ed curriculum, and we are working with our special education teachers on how you implement that curriculum, even if the student needs that smaller classroom environment or that more intense instruction. The other things that we have done is align materials. Again, based on my feedback and what I saw, that individual schools were determining what materials they were using with students, and there wasn't a systemic way to determine what materials were best served. One of the things we really did this year, as Bridget shared, teachers have really good, better information in using the Fontes and Pennell benchmarking system about students' leveled reading. I purposely had set aside about $150,000 in our IDEA grant and working with our instructional coaches. We purchase materials across the K-8 levels, a lot of nonfiction text at the different leveled readers. So for example, in science, there's different topics like forces of motion, which matches our gen ed. Well, now we have nonfiction text that is very real, very student friendly. It's not, use the kids' words, it's not babyish, that our teachers can use for those students that might have more significant reading challenges, but they're still being exposed to the same content with their gen ed peers. So those are the kinds of things that we've done system-wide.
Sure. And as we go through this program review, how do you chunk this up into pieces? Thank you. This is like drinking.
I know, I love my people.
Here.
Can I just say?
Yeah, you guys are doing God's work, I swear. but how do we get our arms around it? I mean, I got a bunch of questions, but it's probably not right now. But as this comes back in pieces,
I would love for you to send those. Marianne and I have started meeting, and one of the things we're going to start with, and I don't want to speak as if I know her process because that's her expertise, of what do we need to ask families. So we're going to start in the next few weeks. We're just going to randomly select families from We've categorized the kids based on the level, so we make sure the level of support that the students are receiving. So we make sure we're asking parents from all of these different levels, and we're going to start with the survey to see what kind of feedback that we're getting of what we need to go into deeper. I don't know if that does
okay. I mean, because I'm interested in parent feedback,
right?
Especially, but then I mean, just that question, and I've been asking this for a long time, which is, how do we know that we're having an impact? And I mean, you talk about data up here, and again, if we're going to go through this review, we don't have to do this tonight at this time. But when you come back and when we talk about these things, I'd urge you to break these up into smaller, digestible chunks that we can dive deeper on. That definitely bring the parent perspective to it, but then also try to answer that question, which says, how do we know we're having an impact? And I think that covers most of what we have. But those are my top level. I'd just like to have this conversation again in a smaller chunk at 8 o'clock.
I tried to go first. I did, though. No, the data piece is important to us. Like when we look at individual goals, and we've actually looked at a couple systems this year, and we're not finding what we like. And in the next 2 weeks, some of our special education staff is going to be working with Dr. Leanne Young out of the Association of Supervision of Curriculum Development. She's their lead professional development in looking at the use of rubrics more for when we have those students that are less sensitive to growth on a standardized measure, and how we can, to your point, we want to know how our students are doing, and they're just breaking that down into smaller chunks, and it's a little bit more labor intensive. It's a lot more labor intensive than, say, a standardized assessment, but we think it's going to give us better data, just like the FNP has given us better data about our student learning. And the same with the EUREK assessments. We'll be working on aligning those across the district in terms of how we modify those, and we'll be able to bring that back next year when we do that work this summer.
Yeah, and then when we talk about data and support, I recognize it, particularly at this level, they're very granular and individualized. But I do believe that at some macro level, how many kids are progressing against the goals that are set, even though they're all different, it's still helpful for us to understand. So I don't want to insinuate that we can reduce this to data and draw a bunch of bar graphs, because you need one for each kid at this level. So
yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, I want to say one thing. I have a lot of probably other questions, but I think, considering the time. First of all, thank you. This is tough work. There is no one size fits all, and it's challenging. So thank you for doing the work and digging in. And I guess just as you dig into this for next year to evaluate, the programming, we talk a lot about college, career, and life ready. And I think that something that sometimes gets missed with these students is, what does that look like for them? And if you have a goal and a vision, you may not get there, but you know where you're heading. And so as you evaluate the programs and what you're doing and are they working, I hope that that's a part of that for these students.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Anything else? All right, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Okay, community advisory team update.
Okay, good evening. Malia is listed on the agenda. She'll add a couple comments probably after on the process and some specifics and some details. So what I would like to do here is run you through the final draft of what we would like to take out to the community beginning on Saturday, May 12th at York, and we'll list those dates at the end of the presentation and explain a little bit more perhaps what those days will look like. But the first slide for the presentation would just be the slide where we would kind of do our general welcome and introductions. And then when we get into the presentation, we expect it to flow kind of like this. Elmhurst prides itself on its public schools. A national leader in future-ready learning, provides state-of-the-art programming and requires facilities that support this programming and allow for personalized learning experiences for its students. Our community has a tradition of believing in and investing in our public schools. The correlation between strong public schools and the overall health of a community is clear. The district's vision is to ensure that all students graduate college, career, and life ready. The district has developed 4 belief statements to support the mission of accelerating learning for all students. The model that reflects the draft operational plan demonstrates that student achievement, sustainability, and facilities should be interrelated and complementary in a manner that supports this mission as opposed to being considered in isolation. Therefore, the draft concepts inherent in the Master Facilities Plan reflect an emphasis on future-ready learning and the 6 C's of creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, character, and citizenship, which are the foundation of D205's instructional approach. The district has experienced many recent accomplishments and program improvements. In order to continue on the long history of success in D205, the district believes that an eye to the future is required in order to appropriately serve students and protect the community's investment. This slide here shows some recent successes that we've had. And so from the mobile learning implementation to the instructional coaches, the dual language and project lead, the way that's coming next year, we've had a lot of recent successes. And what we want to do is try to make sure that we are set up in this community for future decades to continue moving the district forward and having continued success in all areas. And so we have kind of a slide here that says this is who we are now, and we're going to talk about where we want to be next in just a little bit. And so this particular graph illustrates the current condition of our facilities. So moving forward is related, if all of these 3 components are related, moving forward also has to take a look at what do we need to do as it relates to facilities. And so our newest school, Churchville, is nearly 50 years old. There have been various additions and projects over the decades to all of our schools, and these are included in the annual report, which was mailed to all D205 residents. So if you look at this graph, you see that as it relates to our oldest schools, the needs of York were addressed in the 2000 referendum, and Hawthorne received significant attention in the 2006 referendum. Lincoln and Field, the remaining 2 oldest buildings, are focal points in the current draft master plan. Parts of Lincoln are more than 100 years old. Field is not far behind. Portions are 90 years old. Maintaining these aging buildings is becoming more challenging each year as hundreds of people utilize them daily for significant portions of the year. D205 is the only district among our comparators that is experiencing growth. We anticipate 1.4% continued growth over the next 3 years. This is taken into account in our initial plans. So this slide reflects where we would like to go next and includes the key drivers of the current plan. And you see those listed up there, the aging infrastructure and the basic facility and maintenance needs, the safety and security needs, all-day kindergarten, balancing class sizes, and future-ready learning. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of those. and facility deficits. So this slide shows flooding at field, but there are many problems in our older buildings, including temperature fluctuations, poor plumbing, insufficient wiring, cracks, etc. In addition, many present significant challenges for people with disabilities. In our plans, any kind of stormwater remediation on site would be taken care of as part of what we do to each individual building. Here's another example. This shows the current condition of the parking lot at Churchville. The district would like to redo the entrance and the layout of the parking lot as part of a comprehensive project. Safety and security of students and staff is a top priority. Every building should have a secured vestibule where visitors can be screened before they enter the buildings. The draft plan addresses this. While we have video cameras and security measures in place at all of our schools, only 3 of 13 currently feature modern secured entrance. In a phone poll conducted in fall 2017, 81% of residents, which includes non-parents and seniors, support all-day kindergarten. By a 3-to-1 margin, residents favor introducing access to all-day kindergarten at neighborhood schools. More than half of residents strongly prefer this option. Results from Focus 205, a survey of this year's kindergarten parents, and the Thought Exchange survey all reinforce this finding. Now in this slide, we would edit the video that you saw and condense that down to a shorter version of the all-day kindergarten video. In order to ensure that students are college, career, and life ready upon graduation, we need to recognize that school needs to look different than when it was originally conceived and what most of us in this room experienced. The new technology, the infusion of new technology, rapidly changing global economy has significant implications for current and future employment opportunities. Different skills are required to successfully navigate this new world. The formal community engagement process started in 2015 with Focus 205. That process identified some high-level district priorities. This upcoming portion of the community engagement process is primarily focused on facilities. The current slide shows the next steps. And so when you look at this slide, you could see that this is where we are now. So the first part is what we've already done, Focus 205. We did a educational alignment study. We have done some work with costing some of these things out, a boundary study, all-day kindergarten study, phone poll. All of those things are listed on our district website homepage. And if you go to the district link and scroll down the master facilities plan, a lot of that information is housed there for people to refer to. So as I talked about, the second phase is going to focus almost exclusively on facilities. And it's important to note that the community engagement piece extends throughout the entire process. So there's a lot of work to be done yet in terms of developing schematic designs, doing the design development phase, the construction documents, everything that's listed there, bidding the project out. And so as this project evolves, different people that may be affected in different ways will have ongoing opportunities to participate in the process. So by that I mean if there's a certain group of people that are affected by some type of a transition, those people would have opportunities for input and feedback. Different school, throughout the design process, you have teachers, parents, other types of school personnel and community members would have the opportunity to participate in workshops and work through how the actual final plans come to fruition. So that's a little bit on what this process looks like going forward. Right now, the Board of Education is looking for community input before it determines the exact next steps, and that's why we're here at this community meeting. The feedback that you provide will help us refine next steps and what the future focus of 205 will look like. Focus 205 identified 5 opportunities for the district to explore. As you can see, 4 of them have been implemented or will be implemented next year. The remaining opportunity, all-day kindergarten, is tied to the outcome of these facilities discussions due to the need for additional space. In the spring of 2017, the Focus 205 facilitating team made these 3 recommendations for the board. Specific pricing and impact details should be attached to several scenarios which would support and sustain excellent public education in Elmhurst, including all-day kindergarten feasibility study and pressing facility needs. The board and administration should investigate funding sources to support critical and ongoing facility needs, and the administration should begin working to develop a facilities master plan which addresses the needs of Lincoln and Field elementary schools in the short term. The educational alignment study that I referred to was conducted by staff and architects and is based on the 3 criteria you see. Campus context, facility configuration, and learning spaces. Again, that complete report is included in our master facility plan website link. The draft plan includes recommendations from the findings of this study. This information on Focus 205, the all-day kindergarten study, and other surveys and presentations, as I said, are posted on the district website, and I would encourage people to take a look at that. Now, the findings from the formal studies and the community input are reflected in the draft plan and fall basically into 6 major categories. Safety and security, facility parity across the district, basic maintenance and infrastructure needs, all-day kindergarten, balancing class size, and future-ready learning. So the plan includes 4 options. The first 2 options outline the costs associated with maintaining existing buildings and addressing some building-specific needs. Options 3 and 4 incorporate the instructional improvements that would include all-day kindergarten, future-ready learning, and other comprehensive program improvements. So, we have a problem with this particular presentation here. All right, we'll have to take a look at why that happened. So that's why we're doing this tonight, I guess, is to fix stuff. Okay, so the first option, basic building improvements and repair. We have approximately $26.1 million of just basic maintenance repair needs related to parking lots, roofs, tuck pointing, other types of things. For example, we're putting a chiller on the roof at Field this year because that expired and no longer works. So it's very warm on the 3rd floor of that building right now. So those are the types of things that we're talking about here. So those are all or largely items from the 10-year master facilities plan. So if you took a look at the price tag on that, that roughly equates to about $2.6 million annually for 10 years. So what I did is I just gave an example of what $2.6 million translates into. So we do have students that pay athletic fees. So when you take a look at what the district cost is to support our high school athletic programs at York, that's about $1 million. And if you took a look at trying to attach some type of thing that you could make sense of to what does $1.6 million roughly equate to, that's about 20 teachers. And so when you start talking about teachers, you're talking about things like class sizes or elective offerings at the high school. In that first option, what you see on this slide is that we have bonds that are expiring, and if we did not issue any new bonds for the facility projects, then the money would have to come from current operating funds. And so that's why you would see that there would be some type of other impact on our resource allocation decisions because we would not currently have or would not have a funding source for those types of facility repairs. And so in the lower right-hand corner of the slide, each of these scenarios we have the dollars attached to it. So each of the dollars is an annual amount, and it's based on a $500,000 home. So a person who owns a $500,000 home in this scenario would actually see their taxes go down $800 a year because the bonds would fall off, and that's what that translates into. In option 1B, we have the same scenario, only this is what it would look like if we actually issued new bonds to cover the costs of basic maintenance. And in that case, the owner of a $500,000 home would see their taxes go down $363. So that's option 1B. Now, option 2 is a little bit more extensive. It's all the basic maintenance needs, but then it also gets into some other building-specific needs to try to create some parity across the district and address some outstanding issues at buildings, like the safe and secure entrances and the air conditioning at Jackson and Jefferson. So the price tag to do all that work is $55.4 million. The tax implication annually on a $500,000 home, that homeowner would see their taxes go down $273. In option 2B, we basically have the same option, but in options 1 and 2, as we said, we're showing some scenarios where we would not do anything that would relate to new buildings. It would basically just address, these are the buildings we have, fix those, it's our existing infrastructure, and in this case, the recognition that Lincoln needs significant attention in order to bring true parity across the district and get Lincoln to the state of what our other schools are at. It would cost $26.5 million. So in option 2B, we take care of all those things and show what the price tag would be to renovate an existing Lincoln. That allows us also to show you in the next slide the difference in the cost between building new. And so in option 2B, you have $82.7 million worth of work, and the impact on a $500,000 home. In this case, taxes for that individual would go down $201. So, if the community were to decide that it wanted to just kind of be in a maintain mode, you would be, I believe, I'm predicting, that future boards, future administration would need to visit this conversation in about 8 to 10 years, because a lot of the needs would still exist. You'd have a lot of old buildings. You would have long-term things that are not addressed in terms of a master plan. So when you get into options 3 and 4 and you start to get into future ready, we have a long-term master plan that starts to take the community several decades into the future. And when we talk about the future, we want to show a few examples here of what future ready spaces look like. The reason for that is sometimes it's difficult to imagine that when your own frame of reference is only what you experienced in school. And so these next couple slides are some examples. These are collaboration zones. You can find different areas in hallways. You can take walls down, rearrange space, and create flexible spaces for students to learn. You've got media centers. In all of the proposed future-ready designs, the goal would be to try to make media centers the centerpiece of the school, kind of the lifeblood of the school, a lot of activity, a lot of excitement. Students would be hopefully if we were to move in that direction, have many, many opportunities to integrate what you've been hearing about tonight, the 6 C's, into all of their learning activities. And there you see some STEM and maker spaces. So those are some of the things that start to show up if you move towards option 3 and 4 in this plan. So future-ready options are where we begin to include the ability to accommodate all-day kindergarten. So 3A includes a new Lincoln, an expansion at Edison, a renovated field, future-ready upgrades to include STEM spaces at all schools, and a renovated York auditorium. The reason the York auditorium is included beginning in option 3 is because it was omitted from the 2000 referendum due to cost. And so it's something that has been hanging out there for 18 years now. And we believe that there is cause to suggest that the community consider addressing this. Now, the tax implication attributable to all-day kindergarten in these options is about $19. And that is, we translate that based on the number of extra classrooms that we would need and some of the nuances of the construction of Edison. So, so that in and of itself is about $19 per taxpayer to move toward an all-day kindergarten model in the district. The difference between a complete overhaul of the existing Lincoln School and a new Lincoln School with an estimated price tag of $32.5 million, that cost to the taxpayer is approximately $22. So the difference between a complete renovation of the existing Lincoln and a new Lincoln School is $6 million, and that, as I said, translates into $22 per household. I'm going to explain a little bit more about the Edison expansion as it relates to our plans for all-day kindergarten. The only difference between slide 3A and slide 3B is the difference between a renovated field school and a new field school. So with the age of field, people have asked, should we consider building new? And the cost difference between expanding and renovating field, expanding it to include all-day kindergarten, rearranging spaces, et cetera, is $7.4 million. That is at an additional cost of $31 per year to the taxpayer. So if you go back to option 3, the only difference is a renovated versus a new new field. And so the cost of everything that's included on that screen is an estimated $144.1 million. So in that scenario, the approximate annual tax impact on a $500,000 home would be an increase of $51. In any of these scenarios, the tax implication as it relates to the home value is proportional. So you can calculate based on the worth of your home off the $500,000 number. So if it's $250,000 home, it's half as much. If it's $1 million home, it's twice as much. It's all proportional. So here you see that extra $7.4 million, bringing the total price tag up to $151.7 million. Average annual impact on a $500,000 home, $82. When we move, so that's kind of an example of some auditorium concepts. We have issues with the rigging. We have to rent equipment for performances. Very old equipment, in some cases, potentially safety issues. So when we go to option 4, we're now doing everything that we had in option 3, but we're starting to get into some of the things that that move away from just the parity concept of the elementary schools and the instructional enhancements and move toward future-ready learning, and also then talk about addressing other needs, other lingering needs in the district. So we have Madison Early Childhood Center is included in there. That's at a price tag of $8.2 million. We have a Churchville Auditorium in there, site improvements at York that would support a health careers pathway and other STEM programming, as well as upgrades to the athletic facilities. All of these things are included in option 4. So option 4 with a renovated field, $161.1 million average annual tax impact on a $500,000 home, $120. And then again, the difference between 4A and 4B, the only difference is now you move and you add a new field, and that adds $7.4 million onto the price tag, so you come to $168.5 million, average annual impact $149 on a $500,000 home. So those are the various different scenarios, ranging from basic maintenance plus some additional building repairs, moving into future-ready learning, which gets us parity across the district, all-day kindergarten, and begins to address the Lincoln and Field issue. So there are some more pictures, give you some examples of what our current early childhood center looks like as compared to what a newer design would look like. You can see that some of the features are more age appropriate due to the size and different types of instructional approaches that you use with children in that age range. So the only remaining opportunity, and we, so there's the church, just an example of some different middle school auditoriums. You could go with some multi-use concepts, or you could go with a traditional auditorium. Any of those kinds of things would be possible. Interestingly, Churchville is the only middle school in the district with 2 gyms. It's also the only middle school in the district without an auditorium. So there is not necessarily ever going to be true parity across all of our facilities, but the goal is to try to move in the direction of providing similar experience for students irrespective of attendance center. So, as stated earlier, the only remaining opportunity from Focus 205 that is yet to be addressed is all-day kindergarten. The community has expressed an interest in all-day kindergarten and has made it clear that it prefers a neighborhood school option over grade-level centers or a kindergarten center. In order to accomplish that, the district needs more space. Therefore, boundary adjustments would only be considered in association with options 3 and 4. Edison is centrally located and has room to expand. The district has been working with a boundary consultant to explore some minor boundary adjustments that would support all-day kindergarten in a neighborhood school configuration, help the district balance class sizes more consistently, and improve its ability to provide appropriate social, emotional, and other programming for students. Any boundary adjustments would include grandfathering provisions so that no current students would be impacted, and criteria for siblings would be established. The average class size in the district is 21.8 at the elementary schools, but some campuses are more crowded than others, and in the smaller schools it is difficult to manage anomalies that occur on given years if certain grades come through the system with more than typical numbers of students. Having 3 to 4 section schools would minimize these occurrences. Another auxiliary benefit of expanding Edison is that it would provide options for housing students during the construction phases of a new Lincoln and possibly new Field school. So the first option that I'm showing you would move 62 students east from Hawthorne to Edison, 47 students north from Jackson, which needs more space to accommodate all-day kindergarten, to Lincoln, and 88 students north from Lincoln to Hawthorne. These students would be bused due to having to cross the railroad tracks. This option meets all the criteria of all-day kindergarten, balancing class sizes and minimizing the impact on students, with only 5.7% of our current students affected. Facility utilization balances nicely across all school sites at between 80 and 85%. No scenario is going to be perfect, and in this case, concerns were expressed about some of the natural barriers, such as train tracks and major roads. The consultant was asked to explore other options that potentially accomplish similar goals, but take that factor into account. This option does so, preserving the existing Lincoln boundaries and moving the same number of students east to Hawthorne. 64 students would move from Jackson to Jefferson, and 65 students from Jefferson to Edison. In this option, no new students are bused, since the students that would be moving from Jefferson are already bused to Jackson due to living south of Butterfield Road. The facility utilization does not balance as well. For example, Lincoln would be over 90% and Hawthorne drops to close to 70%. But it does meet all of the other criteria and affects only 5.5% of the current students. As is the case in the previous option, some students who enjoy the convenience of being easily able to walk to school would move to a school that is further away. This next option is a variation of the previous slide. In this option, 62 Hawthorne students are still moved to Edison, but the 65 students that would have been bused to Jefferson now get bused to Edison, and the Jefferson boundaries are not impacted. This affects only 3.6% of our current students, and unlike the other two scenarios, all of the students moved would be moved to what is essentially a new school. No students would be moved away from new construction. However, the boundaries in this case would not be contiguous. So, bringing it all back home, 4 options, 2 that reflect the status quo and 2 that support future-ready learning, with annual cost adjustments based on a $500,000 home and some specific considerations for dealing with Lincoln Field and capacity for all-day kindergarten. These are the scenarios we went through, consolidated into one slide with all the same information attached. And so what's coming next are 4 community engagement sessions. The first being May 12th, 9:30 at York, and then there's 3, 1 at each of the middle schools, May 14th from 7 to 9 at Churchville, May 23rd from 7 to 9 at Bryan, and May 30th from 7 to 9 at Sandburg. There, as you can see, the people who attend will have the opportunity to fill out an exit survey online, and there will be some table exercises that will allow for feedback and input questions from the participants. So that's what's coming up next, and at this point, did you want to go into any other kind of detail on those?
Just to summarize quickly, the Community Advisory Team met on April 30th to review a draft community presentation and give input on how to simplify this multi-layered message. Based on their feedback, along with suggestions gleaned from discussions with PTA council officers, the listening sessions with Edison Field and Lincoln parents, and the school-specific information meetings with Jefferson and Fisher, which were held on Monday, the Future Focus presentation you saw tonight emerged. Meetings are scheduled with the other elementary schools between May 14th and 24th. We will offer an open house gallery walk using giant display boards at stations at the middle schools beginning at 6:15 p.m. just prior to the community-wide presentations on May 14th, 23rd, and 30th. We have been working as a team to construct the agenda for the 4 community meetings, the first of which will be held this Saturday, as we've noted many times, at York High School beginning at 9:30 a.m. The setup will be, as Dave mentioned, very similar to our Focus 205 meetings, with participants sitting at tables to promote discussion. The presentation will be followed by some group activities, which are designed to help the board narrow the options that are currently being presented. There would be a discussion guideline, and we will ask for a volunteer moderator and note taker at each table. We will collect emails so that participants can provide additional feedback through an exit survey. Do you have any questions about that?
First, I wanted to say thank you very much for moving forward with those additional listening sessions. And I'm wondering, and I thought I heard you say that some of the information has already been integrated in based off of that. Okay, that's excellent. And I know there were plans for some of those questions, the general FAQ or frequently asked questions. How is that moving forward, and what information might be available at any of these sessions?
We're still working on the FAQ. As we're going to the school-specific meetings, we're passing out index cards and asking people to write down questions, which is going to help us build the FAQ. So it's still in process right now. Hopefully that will be launched very soon. We wanted to get kind of a basic FAQ up there first instead of just having it wide open. We wanted to have what we thought were some of the recurring basic questions and answers put up there first. But then people will be able to be a living document. People will be able to actually enter a question, and we will then turn around and answer that and publish it on the continuing FAQ document. So Dave Smith is going to help us set that up, and we're getting close to having that launched.
And I apologize, I don't mean to press you, but do you know when approximately would you think it would be launched by that Wednesday, that Bryan Middle School meeting, or the 30th, the Sandburg Middle School meeting? Any idea?
I would hope before the end of the month. Yes, definitely. I would say within the next couple weeks.
Okay.
We just have had a lot of balls in the air recently, so we're doing the best we can. In good news, the annual report, long promised, is finished. It is in the mail, so people should be receiving these very shortly. And there's a lot of information in here that I think is going to be very helpful to just getting an overall grasp of what's going on in the district.
Anybody else? Chris?
A couple questions. So you've had several meetings already. And this, I guess, gets wrapped in a larger question, is how do we create that feedback loop with us on the board level to gather? I mean, I think you have exit surveys going forward. I would hope that we can see those as a board. But also, did you do those for the 3 that you had? Or there are 5, right? You had Edison, Lincoln, Field, and then you had 2 others?
The exit surveys are just going to be at the large group meetings. So we were employing the index cards to gather questions at the school-specific meetings and at the listening group meetings. Now, granted, everybody that went to one of those smaller group meetings, we urged to come to the large group meeting because it's going to be a little bit different presentation. It's going to be a broader scope, and they, at that time, can take the exit survey and weigh in with their opinions.
Okay, but I'm just curious about what happened in those meetings. I was unable to attend. I would like to know, as you have these meetings, what the key questions that were that, because ultimately our name's on this. We represent the community, and I think we need to be your partner. And so I'd like to sit next to you, figuratively, in these meetings. And understand what you're hearing, and unfiltered or otherwise. Because our job, our goal is to take the temperature of the community.
First, know that your board president is attending every single one of these meetings, so that's a resource for you. Secondly, just as an example of one of the changes we made, if you remember, we gave a presentation where instead of talking about status quo and future ready, we talked about treading water and moving forward. We received feedback that they felt like that was sort of really a bias that we were presenting there, because who would want to tread water? We all want to move forward. So again, in response to that feedback, we've now changed the presentation so that the first 2 options are status quo, and the 3rd and 4th option are future ready. So it's a little bit more, I guess, even keel what we're presenting here.
Sure. No,
so that's just as an example.
Is there a report out from these meetings that someone can put together for the whole board that can summarize what happened, what the key questions are, what the tone of the meeting was?
The report out will come on June 19th. we can certainly touch base with you before then, but that's going to be the big picture report.
I guess I'm asking the communication department at our district that we oversee to please, after each meeting, write up the meeting and share that with each board member, please.
Okay.
I don't want to wait weeks at a time. I want to know what's happening, because I'm getting approached by people out in the public that have gone to these meetings, and I have no idea. And if you want this to pass, I think you need us to be your biggest advocates out there. I need to be armed with the information. So I don't understand why we can't have some kind of minutes or summary of these meetings to keep us in the loop on this for those of us that can't make those meetings to sit there.
Okay.
Thank you. The other question I have is, and I guess I assume you'll share the exit surveys with us from the large meetings?
On June 19th, you'll get a summary of the...
Can I please see the exit surveys? Can you just share them with us unadulterated? I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, just send us the file. I'd love to look through it.
Let me talk to Dr. Moyer and Malia and understand what the ramifications of releasing people's comments are. So let me just...
Can you take the names off of them? The more information you give us, the easier it is for us to support you guys. So please help us with that.
I think what we're trying to say, it's not that we're trying to be resistant, but we have to get our arms around this. Sometimes more is more. Like, Marcia is an expert at, synthesizing this information and summarizing it. So we can certainly show it to you.
I'd just like to recognize that we're the experts in getting the community to vote for us. I don't think any of you guys have gotten 3,000 votes yet. We would like to use that help to help us all collectively do something great for this district.
Thank you. We appreciate your support.
So I'd just like to see what's going on unfiltered. I mean, we can handle it. The other question I have, is there any plans we've been seeing pictures of issues with buildings. Are there any plans to conduct building tours and take people around and go through these buildings to see the state that they're in? Because I think this was done last time we tried this.
I think that is planned for the future. Dr. Moyer showed the timeline. We're early on in the timeline.
Sure.
So certainly, yes. And I would really like to see us do some videos for people who can't visit the building.
That's a great idea.
So yes, that's definitely included in the plan, just not at this particular
point. Okay. I was curious if that's in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then last question relates to boundaries, and it's a question that we've gotten, which is when we talk about this, one of the new scenarios and how Lincoln would end up with 90%, the logical question there was, can you add another classroom, or why don't you make Lincoln bigger?
The specs, the guidelines, the industry standard, that's the word I'm looking for. The industry standard for schools in terms of square footage versus number of students you house on a site would suggest that a school that would have, in this case, over 600 students, if we were to build that school larger, would 11 acres would be appropriate for a school of that size. The Lincoln site is 3.6 acres. So to put that many more students on that site would be very problematic in terms of programming and then managing different types of operational things.
And so I think that's a logical answer, and I know we're landlocked and we have small parcels and there's a limit to how big we can build things, and we're probably too big for what we've got anyway. But so when you talk about these boundary scenarios, I mean, again, the quick thing is if you're rebuilding the whole school, make it bigger. I think that point should be made, both for Field and for Lincoln, as it relates to its ability, the site's ability to house that many people or kids.
Okay, that's a good point. I appreciate that.
All right, who else? Go ahead, Shannon, you haven't.
One is for the community engagement plan. I think in this presentation, you have a list of upcoming meetings. I think it would be helpful for people to show the larger picture of community engagement. I thought we talked about a possible phone poll, other polling, mailers to the entire community. So if we could show some of those too, because some people can't attend the meetings and they want to hear about this also, if we can show the big picture for the community engagement beyond May, so everyone can have a chance to learn about this. Also, this might be in here in bits and pieces too. If the voters approve something in November, I'd like to show how it's 5 to 7 years? How many years was it to be done with the projects? What was the time frame for that?
As it stands right now, because of the way the bonding is structured that you've seen in terms of trying to create a bonding scenario where people's taxes level out over time and don't spike. Okay, what Elizabeth has shown you has 3 different bond issuances, so that means that we have to stagger the construction based on when the money comes in. So that's why it's about a 5-year. That's why it's about a 5-year process. Now, depending on which option the board would ultimately sanction, and by that I mean whatever boundaries implications there are, whether it's a new field or a renovated field. Some of the feedback we've been getting, again, is can you expedite getting to all-day kindergarten? Can you expedite my kid having a chance to benefit some of these from some of these changes, et cetera. And I think that once I know when the board is willing to go to a referendum and what scenario it is willing, to put out there in front of the community, I can come up with a few more of those specific types of details. We can sit down and get a little bit more specific about the timelines and when the summers occur, according to when the money comes in and everything else. And I think that there might be some options to get to all-day kindergarten, for example, sooner. But I think it's difficult for me. It's difficult for me to get into too many specifics until I know for sure, exactly what the ultimate decision is. But generally speaking, what we're looking at now is approximately a 5-year project.
On slide 15, I think, maybe just give some kind of rough timeline, like 5 years or something to give that this isn't 1 or 2 years. This is somewhere in the range of 5 years.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, add like a.
I know it's a rough plan.
Yeah, add some dates in there. Okay. All right.
So one of these things, I had the opportunity to attend one listening session, and I thought the listening session, it went very well. What was nice about the listening session is there was a time for two-way dialogue. So there was a time where people could ask questions and those questions could be answered. I would like to make sure that this type of conversation could also occur in these meetings here. With all that being said, I think there's a lot of information that people are going to want to know that has already been asked. So if there's any way we can move up that FAQ and get it out there as soon as possible, because that will alleviate having to make this presentation super long, and it'll decrease the amount of time that people can actually have a conversation. And we can continue to refine this FAQ. But the sooner we get that out there, because a lot of these questions have been asked, and you've answered them, I'm sure multiple times. You answered most of them when the one session I was in. And that's just information that needs to be known, that people want to know. We don't have to spend a lot of time on a presentation. People can look through the FAQ and pull out what they want. So again, the request, any way we can get that FAQ out as soon as possible, I think would help in this process that we're going through.
All right, who's next? Jim?
One more. It was about the costs that were associated with each option. You mentioned it verbally, but I'm just wondering if it would help to have something on a slide of how our debt is expiring. So some people have asked, how could this project, 144 million, cost me, whatever it was, $52 per year? If we could just explain that a little bit more to make it understandable, like believable, like how the timing is falling into place financially with our debt.
So here's one thought on that. After the status quo / future ready slide, and before I get into the scenarios, we talked about having a finance night where we just focus on finance, because that gets to be, that can be a lot of stuff. I could just have a slide that summarizes some of the things I said about the numbers, for example, the $500,000 home, the proportionality of the tax impact, the bonds falling off, trying to level out the tax burden over time, that kind of stuff. Just a standalone slide, you think? Or something like that, or?
I like what you're saying. I'm not sure. That's where we need the communication experts to, get the message about what you're saying. That message needs to be really clear.
We might want to add Jim Collins' statement that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We might want to add a little background about how the board has spent years refinancing bonds and putting us in a position where this is possible.
But let's not say once in a lifetime, but certainly tenure of bonds is 20 years, so once in a generation. And I agree with Shannon. You've completely missed framing the argument here by not saying up front, we can do so much for so little tax increase or no tax increase because the district will be debt-free beginning in 2025. And if you just extend our current debt load for another 25 years, here's all the things we can do that sets our district up for success for the next generation. And
At least, yeah.
To Shannon's point, people don't get it because we don't give them that crucial bit of information up front.
Guys, Dave, just a suggestion. Something as simple as we've issued separate, there was a 2000 referendum, there's a 2006 referendum. It's kind of like, okay, here's when the referendum passed, here where the bonds expire, here's where the referendum's passed. You did it with the age of the buildings. And if you got a timeline and it just shows those dropping off and the new stuff kind of picking up in like 3 bars, the point just being that there's a cliff in the debt service. Elizabeth's picture, I think, with existing debt service and then the different issues showing level, maybe a little complicated for this presentation, maybe for the finance that works. But I think for something like this, it would be something just as simple as showing the various bond issues and when they were issued and when they mature and how we've shortened that maturity, and then just how we're going to add on to the end of that with this proposed new one would start kind of a little bit over the top of it and then move on from there. I think if we can make it a really simple picture along those lines, it communicates that in one slide in this presentation, and then you can talk about it in detail if you want to at a different time.
One very minor comment. Speaking of that slide with the age of schools, which I think is a very informative slide, problem is I couldn't read from this distance the names of the schools on the left side.
Do you remember the slide we had that White put together that had the presidents? It showed, maybe we'll revert to that.
I like this slide
You like
better.
that one? You just can't read it.
I just couldn't read the names of the schools. I
Okay.
thought that
So
was...
what I'll go back and do in that Excel spreadsheet is I'll just play with this so that, I'll increase that cell to get those names larger or whatever, and if I can't do it, I'll talk to Jenna. But I'll get that figured out.
Okay, so anybody else before I want to ask them? Okay, just when you talk about the exit survey, I think it's important, like, what general questions do you know yet what you're going to ask? Because I feel like we should make sure that what we want to hear, what we want feedback on is being asked so that it's not a wasted survey, so to speak.
It would be great to hear from the board what you want to learn from this. It was my feeling that probably you would want to see if we could narrow down the options, if we could get people to say one way or the other, this is off the table, I like this. That would really help us. But if there are specific things that the board wants to hear, please let us know.
My big one is no matter what boundary change we make, we're going to get people that don't want to make that change. And that's the biggest thing I keep hearing. We still want neighborhood schools. So how do we accomplish that? I mean, what Chris was asking, and great answer with Lincoln, but that's the big one.
We had talked about, as part of our table exercise, having a discussion of parity and what parity means. And are people really interested in parity? So that might be one of the things that we'd like to chew on during the group discussion.
And I'm thinking in this exit survey, and maybe I'm wrong, I think it will be a little early to start paring down to say, I like option 1 or option 2, 2A. I may be off on that, but what I think would be helpful is, like, what do you still need to know about this program? What are you most, what do you see are the biggest benefits? So I'm trying to think of big questions so we can kind of understand where our community is on this process, and then we can figure out if we need to add additional information, what additional information, what they see as the natural benefits that we might not see as the natural benefits, what they see are the major concerns. We know we've heard the boundary, but are there other ones? And I think there might be, for every person that's there, it's going to affect their child differently. The one session I went to, I heard a concern that I would have never imagined. Believe it or not, someone was concerned that their boundaries weren't being adjusted. So I think that all of that information is helpful to us. And we'll kind of know what people are saying.
And we do plan to have some open-ended questions like that.
Okay, what else?
I've been getting feedback, and it's kind of a catch-22, because are we presenting a plan, or are we listening to people, like give them something to react to and then you listen? Because some people say, there's not enough details, I don't know exactly how this would work, what about the transition year, who's going where? They ask a lot of detailed questions, but then we say, well, we're trying to listen to see what people are reacting to. So it's kind of like you don't want to give too much information because it feels like it's locked in plan, but then people are asking for more information. So I think we need to be clear up front of what the objective is of those meetings. We're showing options and we want to see what people react to. Can you? Yeah.
Just to give you an example of the transition year, if we know that we're going to go toward more of a long-term plan that takes us into the future, that includes a new Lincoln school. I think you're going to find most people are going to say, why would you renovate Lincoln? But some people may take that position. I mean, there may be people out there that feel that way. But if we build a new school for Lincoln, the feedback we've gotten so far from just about everybody is get the students off-site during construction. So we're actually really not even looking at that second plan being worth bringing out to people, because we've heard that. So that being said, the transition issue of what to do during the construction, we actually have a list of the names of all the primary families that could potentially be affected. And when we know the year that we would go out, then we could pare it down. Do we have to cut it off at first grade, second grade, kindergarten, or whatever? And we can actually sit down and start talking with those families and asking them questions about the pros and cons of some of the different options for where we could put Lincoln students. Because, I mean, to ask people that general question right now, when most of those current families aren't even the ones who are being affected, that's why it'll help us to do a little bit more of that when we have a better idea of exactly what we're doing. And I know it's frustrating people to say, well, I want to know all this information, but if I give them information and then it changes, you know, you get dinged for that too. You know, so it is a kind of a little bit of a balancing act.
Okay, what else for the survey? Anything else? I would like to know, or if you can ask this somehow, you know, I mean, you know, we're getting a lot of emails, and I would be curious what people would say is an effective way for them to give us feedback. And I realize that that's going to be varied, and, you know, age plays into it and different things, but, you know, maybe there's something the community will throw out there that seems more effective than some of the things that have been done, and we could try that as the process continues. All right, anything else? Okay. All right, that's it. Okay, action on closed session item. Jim?
That's me. I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Education adopt the resolution authorizing the recall of honorably dismissed teachers.
A second?
Go ahead and ask for a vote. Or is it just, moved by Jim, second by Margaret.
Ask for some discussion.
Any discussion?
Or some explanation of what's going on here.
Well, Jim can give the explanation. The general gist of it is that we honorably dismissed teachers, and we now are able to know what positions we have, and we're bringing the people back to fill those positions. So if you want to give a little bit information on the process and what they're actually approving, then, you know, that would be good.
Oh, the light went on. That's good news. The board is in the process tonight, if they approve this resolution, of recalling 6 teachers that were honorably dismissed because we could not guarantee that they would have full-time teaching positions here next year. And so as part of that process, they were honorably dismissed. That means then that they also have recall rights as positions become available and the staffing starts to shake out, that they can be recalled to positions. We have 4 teachers of the 6 that are being recalled to full-time teaching positions, and there are 2 teachers that are being recalled to .8 positions. That may change moving forward, depending on how the rest of staffing shakes out, but at this point in time, that's what we have available. And so that is what is being offered tonight with the resolution.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes. 6 yeses, no nays, 1 absent. Superintendent's communication.
So I have one item that I'd like to communicate and regrettably communicate, and that is that our Director of Facilities, Frank Shu, passed away Friday evening. The details have not been made known yet, pending information on when his son, who's in the military, will be able to return to the area. That's my report.
Okay. Just today is staff appreciation, and just wanted to take a minute. I know it's late. The board sent out a thank you to all of our staff. We really appreciate everything that they do each day. They welcome more than 8,500 students through the doors of our school district. So just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our staff for working hard for them, for caring for them, for exhibiting great character for them. We're grateful for their commitment to our students each day. And so thank you, and I think it goes without saying a special thank you to Frank for many years of good service to our district. So, thank you. If there's any other board communications? Okay. All right, then we have 3 upcoming meetings. Monday, May 21st, there's a special Board of Education at 6 o'clock. Tuesday, May 22nd, Board of Education, 7:30, and Tuesday, June 19th, Board of Education meeting at 7:30. If there's no other issues, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.